Hey, you guys, it's Kevin Dillon here, aka Johnny Drama. I'm over here with Chiller, having a great time. And by the way, don't forget to check out Claw's Corner, my favorite show. Victory!
Welcome to the latest episode of The Claw's Corner. Today's guest is a writer, director, producer, and documentarian. His movies include Squirm, Blue Sunshine, Just Before Dawn, Remote Control, Satan's Little Helper, and more. His documentaries include Museum, But Seriously, and Sunny Listen, The Mysterious Life and Death of a Champion. He is also the author of Day of the Living Me, Adventures of a Cult Filmmaker from the Golden Age. He considers this a career memoir, not a personal memoir. After reading this book, which contains his adventures with John Lennon, George Burns, Tippi Hedren, Marion Hemingway, Sidney Poitier, Dustin Hoffman, Robert De Niro, and more, I can honestly say that my guest is by far the most interesting man in the world, not Jonathan Goldsmith. So without further ado, please welcome the howdy doody of Hollywood. Of course, I'm talking about Jeff, the Snake Lieberman. Jeff, welcome to the Claw's Corner. How are you?
I like that howdy doody of Hollywood. I don't have my freckles anymore, but I guess you can get paste on freckles these days.
Yeah, we'll put that in post.
Yeah, or tattoos.
I like that. We're going to get to why I called you that with Sonny Liston's wife. But before we do that, I want to go back to 1967. Let's go back to the beginning when, because you were always interested in movies, and one of my favorite authors and is Richard Matheson. I love his work, of course, with The Twilight Zone and the movies he came out with, I Am Legend. But the one movie that had a profound impact on you was his novel and the movie, The Incredible Shrinking Man.
Absolutely.
What was it about that movie that had such a profound impact?
You know, the background of it was 1957. We were being told that the Russians are going to bomb us any day. And radiation, if the bomb doesn't hit, instantly vaporize you, the radiation is going to get you slowly. And on television, we're watching these public service documentaries put out by the government. They literally, I wish you could find these. Here is a rabbit. Here's a rabbit exposed to radiation, and you see a three-eyed gigantic rabbit. They just made this shit up.
Yeah.
To probably, to the military, that we got to get ready to, spend more money on bombing the Russians. Why were they doing that? It just scared everybody. It was all bullshit. And so Hollywood said, hey, all these young people are scared already, and the government's paying the money for promotion and advertising. Let's make movies that'll cash in on the fear they already have. And they would call the radiation movies. And to me, the best one, and the one that hit me the hardest, was The Incredible Shrinking Man. And I think, in retrospect, is because when you're 10, which I was, you're thinking of, like, I have an older brother and he's 2 inches taller, my father's 6 feet. So the whole thing, like, well, I'm 5 feet and a half. You're trying to be taller and taller.
Yeah.
And then you see this movie, and it's like, shit. How do I know there isn't radiation in the air? I'm going to fucking shrink. And my mother had this thing most mothers back then in the suburbs, they would write 4 feet, 5 feet, measure you. So that we had that. And she had to measure me because I was afraid that I was shrinking. So just if I didn't grow at all, I'd be happy as long as I'm not shrinking. That's how much it affected me.
Wow. And well, I'm glad it had such a profound effect on you, because I'm sure, is that something that helped get you into the movies later on, your interest in wanting to do movies?
Yeah, well, the radiation movies absolutely did get me focused on that, but I didn't think of those movies and Hollywood movies. Yeah. Like, I hated Hollywood movies and going to the movies to see Hollywood movies. So when I got older and I started, dating girls, I'd say, what do you want to do? Anything but a movie. And the reason was I was very pragmatic. And I said, look, I got to pick you up at 8 o'clock. The movie, 2 hours, your father wants me to have you back at 12 o'clock. So what we're going to do is most of the time sit in a theater and stare at a screen and not talk to each other. That was my rationale. I didn't want to be there. When the drive-ins came in, that was another story.
Oh yeah.
And like, yeah, okay, I'm into the movie because we're not going to watch the movie anyway. At least I'm not. So I wasn't like a film buff, but I was a sci-fi, um, um, sci-fi movie, especially the radiation movies.
Well, I want to talk about. I want to go up 2 years to 1969 because very recently I saw a documentary on Canon Films. I thought it was hilarious with the Golan and Globus. It was mostly about their time. But you had a job at Canon Films and you were just fresh out of film school. And back then they specialized in cutting and dubbing, recutting and dubbing Swedish softcore movies. So you were in charge of recutting them? No,
Not me.
not you? Okay. What
I
was your job?
I was a assistant editor to somebody who was actually doing the recutting.
Okay.
And so because I really didn't know, I didn't know how to cut anything. So I just an assistant, pull shots from the bin, and that, that kind of thing. And that's where I met Billy Sachs,
Mhm.
that was in the book, that he was cutting this movie down the hall. It was also Canon. The first production was called
The Gap.
well, actually, the Generation Gap. Then they
Ah.
shortened it to the Gap, and then he made it into Joe.
Yeah.
And Joe became a huge hit.
Yeah, which I want to talk about that because I love going to the horror conventions, which I know you're a part of. We'll talk about later. But I bought that movie just by seeing the picture of Peter Boyle on the cover and reading exactly what was going behind the scenes. It makes me love the movie even more because Peter
Yeah.
Boyle was not originally the star of that movie. They had to
No,
recut it.
he was the drunk at the bar, and Bill Sachs saw that, because the movie screened. They fired John Avildsen. He directed it, and the
Yeah.
screening went so badly that they fired him, and they brought in Bill Sachs to save the movie in editing somehow.
Well,
And he did big time.
well, he definitely did, and it's a great movie. I love it. And you know what's funny about John Avildsen? I recently interviewed someone that did a biography on John Belushi, and they were talking about John Avildsen with Neighbors, and they said with that movie they had the same problem with John Avildsen. He did not. John Belushi didn't want him. He wanted to fire him, and it's funny because he went on to do other things that were great. But
Well, wait a minute. After Joe, he did Rocky.
yo, I know that. Yeah,
Yeah, and then nobody, forget about it. Then he
yeah.
was, yeah.
No, definitely. That's why I thought that was funny because I didn't, the story with Joe I didn't realize, but then hearing the story about Neighbors, but Rocky, it's all the one movie. It's all he has to do, and he's known for that. And that's
Well, he made what happened with he got fired, but because of contract, it still said directed by on Joe. So when the Joe made so much money, it's
Yeah.
John Avildsen
yeah.
is a director of a hit, and that's how he got Rocky. That's the way it works.
Oh yeah.
Lucky.
So approximately how long did you work there with Canon?
Oh, not long at all. You might be confusing the two things. I did that, and then when Joe made so much money, they went legitimate.
Yeah.
They made a movie just by coincidence that I had worked in editing, because by coincidence, when they made a movie, a legitimate movie starring Red Buttons and Sylvia Miles and Ernie Pintoff wanted me to work on it so I could fix the script. He hated the script, but it was like he gets a directing gig and it's a legit movie. And so it just happened to be Canon.
Yeah. Well, I was going to get to that. Was that the movie Who Killed Mary? What's her name?
Yeah.
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 So I want right since you just brought that up, I want to talk about that movie because on that movie you were the location scout, and they wanted to film the movie. And let's talk about you, the mob, and you mentioned Red Buttons.
Yeah, well, we say I was location scout because Ernie wanted me to be like a fixer on the script, and there's no such title in a movie. There's a writer that wrote the screenplay, which he didn't like, or he wanted to really beef it up, and so, but in the budget there was no category for me. So that's why I was a location scout, because the producer knew me from commercials. I knew how to do it.
Yeah.
It wasn't something like Ernie didn't want me to location scout. He wanted me to be writing the script all along. So I did both. And when I scouted, it just happened to be, and this is something that your viewers don't know unless they read my book, and I'll bet you Coppola knows this. He has to know it. That we wound up shooting a movie 2 blocks away from The Godfather, and the way that came about is I was scouting in the area where Little Italy was told, don't talk to anybody from The Godfather. They were boycotting the movie because of the mafia. And somehow, and I was completely naive, and I fell into the right place, right time in the bar with the boys. They knew I didn't know who they were, but they liked me. And the next thing, I got every location I needed.
Mm-hmm.
They go, don't worry about The Godfather. This is all I got to know is this is not The Godfather. If I was trying to trick them, I'd be dead. Right?
Yeah.
I said, this is not The Godfather. So we wound up shooting. As a matter of fact, I found a great picture that I found it too late. When we were shooting, the street, we were on Mulberry Street, and 2 blocks over, they were shooting the scene where Don Corleone gets shot with a vegetable cart.
Mm-hmm.
And so we knew that they were going to shoot the scene over there. And Red Buttons said to me, he wants to go up and see Marlon because they did a movie together. I didn't know that. And I brought him over there, and we watched. I was right across the street when they shot that scene. And then when they said, okay, cut, and they put everybody in their bus, and my crew was on my side of the street, and Red came over, and the bus made a U. It was like a school bus, a white school bus. And as it made a U-turn on that street and came by us, Marlon Brando mooned us out the window. Which, on one hand, I want to erase that vision. And then, but if we had cell phones, I would show it to you now, So I found a great photograph of Red in his pea coat that was wearing for my movie or our movie, and Mario Puzo and Don Corleone in in his outfit that he was shooting. Some press guy must have taken a picture of them.
Yeah.
But,
Yeah, very recently I was watching a mini-series called The Offer. It was all about how the mafia did not want The Godfather being made because they thought it was making them look bad and everything. So it's funny, you were right down the street, and it was because according to your book, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, it had to do with you marrying an Italian girl and Red Button starring is what helped you get in
me
with the
marrying
mob.
an Italian girl was such a big deal to them. That was it. And then the fact that I knew everything about me impressed them.
Yeah.
But all the things that you would like, first, if you like, I'm a street guy.
Yeah.
That's what they liked. And so I knew all about the racehorses because my father took me from the time I was a kid. We used to sit in the box, and so I knew about things that most young guys at that age didn't know. Plus the fact that I'm marrying this Italian girl, and they just liked me.
Yeah.
I mean, they liked me too much because they were doing me incredible favors. And my father said, "Be careful, these guys, you're going to owe them."
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And,
Well, let's talk about how your wife Joanne saved your life with the
yeah,
mob.
I had they gave me a phone number. It got to a point. You have to realize, like, you're in Little Italy. They made Little Italy a private lot for us. And everybody, including the director, when they wanted something, they came to me.
Mm-hmm.
Because they said, they knew I'm going to Joe. Let's leave it at Joe. So I said, and it got to a point where it was like ridiculous because they're going to get pissed off at me, not, they keep asking for things. And what was your question? You had a
No,
question?
because you were talking about how your father said, "Be careful, because you're
Yeah,
going to owe
be
them until
careful. So
Yeah,
they
go ahead.
kept doing stuff for me, and then when we wrapped the movie, they said, "When are you getting married?" And then the bartender was the intermediary between me and them. because he was the actual bartender. And it was called Larry's Bar, but his name wasn't Larry. He says, Joe wants to know where you're going to live. Like, why would they give a shit, right? I said, what do you mean? I don't know. We're living in a little dinky 5-story walk-up, $125 a month apartment, right? He says, well, they're putting up a city, one of those middle, what do they call it? Affordable housing thing, but it's towers, right?
Yeah.
Oh, looking out at the Statue of Liberty in Lower Manhattan on the water, luxury doorman. I said, yeah. He goes, so Joe wants to know, would you want to move there? I'm not even thinking of where we're going to live. I figure we're going to live where we're living. We're not moving just because we're getting married. We're already living together. And I said, oh, I couldn't afford that. He goes, don't worry about it. What are you paying now? Whatever you're paying now, that's what it'll be. I said, what? And then he says, but he wants to know when you can move in. Said, I don't know. He says, what difference does it make? He says, well, there's a long waiting list. I said, if it's as cheap as you're saying, there must be 1,000 people. He said, there's more than 1,000 people waiting. So I said, so then I couldn't get it. He goes, no. If you told me you're going to move next month, you'll be 10 on the list. But if you want to move tomorrow, you'll be 1. But I got to know. So I go back to her and I go, you're not going to believe this. We did this. And they had given me a phone number on a piece of paper. And they said, anytime I have any problem, you call this number. Wow. And that meant, believe me, I could have gotten somebody killed if they looked at me the wrong way. But that's what my father was talking about. And she made me tear it up and throw it down the toilet, or we're not getting married. And that was probably, if she didn't make me do that, I'd be dead.
Yeah. Well, speaking of that, the guy that offered that to you not too long after that was shot to death. And you could have been.
That's Joey Gallo.
Oh, that's Joey. Okay.
No, what happened was the bar that I arranged, that they owned the building. It turned out that a famous, notorious guy that I didn't know I was talking to and fooling around with was Matty the Horse Iannello. And Matty the Horse Iannello owned every bar downtown, every discotheque, every peppermint lounge, or any place that they had vending machines. This is big time mob stuff. So his brother owned that building with the bar. Why? Because his brother was clean. So he put it in his brother's name, Michael Iannello. And maybe 3-4 months after we finished shooting in this dingy bar, they changed the bar into a seafood place called Umberto's Clam House. It was in Umberto's Clam House that Joey Gallo went in there and he got whacked. It's like a tourist attraction. Now, had I not torn up the number and stayed in touch with those guys, there's no question in my mind it turned into an Italian restaurant, the same owners. Anytime you wanted to come by. In other words, there'd be a good chance that we could have been there on that night. That's how crazy the whole thing was. When I read that they made it, I saw the address, 129, I think, Mulberry Street. I said, that can't be. That's Larry's Bar. It doesn't make sense. And when I went downtown, I got goosebumps. It's like there's no Larry's Bar anymore. It says Umberto's Clam House. Holy shit. So, dodged another bullet.
The world owes a debt of gratitude to Joanne for saving your life.
No question.
Well, you know what I thought was funny? Because I've read interviews with Tommy James from Tommy James and the Shondells, and he said back in Vegas, the mob owned him. But just like you said, they were very good to. What was that?
Did you read his book?
Not yet. I want to. I didn't read
the book. Is the best book on the music industry ever.
Supposedly they're making a movie on that. They haven't made it yet, and I'm not sure if it's in development hell, but I'm hoping they do.
Yeah.
Because I've read an interview with them, and it sounds very interesting. I've got to put that on my list to buy.
Yeah.
But you were saying in the book that they were very generous. They were giving you money to hand out to the neighbors, or So,
Yeah, the money that, well, they weren't giving me money. What it was is that I owed them money.
yep.
You know, we didn't have it. We had a handshake deal. They wouldn't sign anything, but I said, okay, it's $600 a day for this thing and that. And he says, hand it out, put everybody to work. The guy in the floral
Yeah.
shop, and all of that. And that's how he greased the way, because that's how they got, it's good PR for these guys in the neighborhood. So they didn't take any not my money, but the production's money. So they basically got the locations for free because of me.
Yep. And what was their one request?
Their one request, and I thought, okay, here it comes. They're going to want me to whack somebody. I know it. They figured nobody's going to suspect this little Jew guy, come in and is going to whack somebody. What could it be to pay? And he says, when Sophia Loren and Carlo Ponti were shooting something down there, he gave me the honor of taking them to La Luna for dinner.
Mhm.
I said, yeah. He says, you think it's possible that I could take, and he wants to be a big shot, right?
Yeah.
With celebrities, take Red Buttons and Sylvia Miles. I said, done. And then, so I go, it's Saturday night at La Luna. It was right down the block, famous place. I call up Red. I say, Red, Saturday night, going to dinner. He goes, Boychik, can't do it. I got people flying in from LA and making it, can't you, some other time, but I'm sorry, can't do it. Too short notice. I said, Red, I'm not asking you, I'm telling you. I said, this is Joe from the place. He said it would be an honor to do it, and I really can't say no. I already said yes. He goes, oh, why don't you say that in the first place? He says, you think I want to get my legs broken? I said, what are you talking about? That's when it clarified. Everybody knew they were mobsters but me. Not everybody, but And he says, I said, these guys? He said, I used to do comedy for Joe Bananas. They'd fly him in. A lot of those show business guys from Red Button's era used to entertain the mob for big money. They have a party, they have a wedding, and so boom, Saturday night, there we were.
That's funny.
Yeah.
Well, I want to move on because the Steve McQueen movie Bullet. Everybody knows it. Everybody loves it. So I want to find out from you how Bullet became Blade.
Bullet didn't become Blade.
Well, I mean, you have a story that
How Bullet, Mute Witness became Bullet. Mute Witness was a paperback book that Ernie Pintoff optioned for $500, and he was into Marshall McLuhan, and Marshall McLuhan, like, cool title, one word. He said, instead of calling him Detective Clancy and the movie and making a movie of this called Mute Witness, we'll call him Detective Bullet so we can make the one word.
Yeah.
Basically, that's all he did. And then he got his divorce lawyer to write the screenplay on spec, and Ernie wanted to direct it. And then Steve McQueen said he wanted to play the role, but he wanted who directed that? British.
It was the guy who did The Deep. I'm trying. My mind went blank on that. I know. I
Anyway,
can't remember his name, but yeah.
So that's how that became Bullet. And Ernie made a lot of money because he still got the producer's share. And then he said to me, he wants to do a cool, this was after Who Killed Mary Winston, a cop movie. And he says, Bullet? I said, yeah. This is his pitch to me. Blade.
Yeah.
Blade? Bullet? Blade. John Blade. I said, yeah. He goes, cool guy, smokes a cigar. It's like, there's no story, there's no nothing. That was the pitch. And we wrote it, and I hated, I said, all we're doing, by the way, people don't know that it's probably never been in an interview, but Alan Trustman, who wrote Bullet, the setting, Peter Yates.
Peter Yates, thank you.
The movie was supposed to be in Boston. He
Ah,
was from Boston, and it says in the script, because I saw it, it says there is a chase through the streets of Boston. Okay, now think of that movie without the.
yeah, the hills
I
and
don't know, Steve McQueen was a big star, but it wouldn't be famous for any particular thing. It's because they moved it to San Francisco without changing the script at all. Well, if you have a car chase where it's like the Coney Island roller coaster,
yeah.
that's what you're going to get. But that was like what really happened. So anyway, I halfway through, I said, Ernie, what are we doing? Neither of us were ever arrested for anything. We're drawing bullshit stuff that we see from like the street, TV series, cornball dialogue, cornball characters. And so I basically dropped out. I mean, we wrote the script, but I didn't want to be the producer. The idea is I produce it and Ernie would direct. But had I known that he was going to get John Marley to play Blade, and for the life of me, I still don't know. The timing was so close. Did John Marley commit to doing Blade before The Godfather? It's around exactly the same time. Obviously, that great Walls, the guy, that was John Marley, and the idea of if I had it to do over again, and I knew that I would want to do it just to work with John Marley, and I guess maybe he did it because he never gets a leading role. He'd always be a character in the movie. I don't know. That's how Blake came.
Well, there's three other people in that movie that people maybe not didn't know back then, but now they know. A young, unknown Morgan Freeman, Rue McClanahan from Golden Girls, and then you had Ted Lang, who played the bartender on Love Boat.
Oh yeah, and in New Who Killed Mary? What's her name? Had Sam Waterston.
Yeah, at Law and Order.
With the and who else? There was a couple of Ron Carey, and Conrad Bain had a TV series for years. Conrad Bain.
Wow.
So I would get all the good New York actors, no doubt about it.
Yeah. Well, I want to talk about, because even during your movies, especially, just before Dawn, you had some stories, and Squirm, which we're going to get to, some of the actors that you could have had in the movie but turned down and became big stars. We'll get to that in a minute, but I want to go through, I want to talk about The Ringer next, because you were a King Feature Syndicate, and I want to talk about how the Ringer came about and how that opened so many doors for you.
Yeah, well, they wanted to do. This was the time of everybody was hysterical about drugs. This is your brain on drugs, all that kind of stuff. And so King Features they would do these movies. Everybody knows that the AV guy comes in and shows you these public service, Emo the Magnificent, Susie Gets a Period, those classroom films. So they made a big business about they had the Hearst Metronome News. It's Hearst, the same company. And they would do newsreels. So that you see the news of the week. And they also did public service stuff. And it's very lucrative because the school district would buy, don't forget, there's no video. They buy 16 millimeter prints. Mm-hmm. At that time, they were $400 a pop. You know what that is? It's like almost $2,000 in today's money. And if a whole region buys it, you're making very serious money. So they wanted to do a anti-drug movie, but they were told that Pepsi's going to sponsor it, but they were told that they're being laughed at and making these things that are just, the kids laugh at it, throw things at the screen and goof on it. And so they wanted to do something different. They brought me in only because I hadn't done anything. They brought me in only because I looked like somebody who would know not to do that.
Yeah.
Something that they won't throw things at the screen. And that's how I got the gig. And I really did it. And cutting, without talking about the film, I think it's 19 minutes or something. But the feedback that they got was everybody was dead silent through the whole movie. Nobody was laughing. But at the end, when the Pepsi logo came out, they all booed and threw things at the screen. Meaning, because what the movie was saying, I did a movie basically that kids will buy anything if you market it correctly.
Mm-hmm.
So I hooked in drugs as a product and a fake item called a ringer. I figured nobody in a million years would ever put a ring in their nose. This is 1972.
Yep.
So I said, okay, I'm going to make the most outrageous thing and then show you how Madison Avenue can get you to wear a fucking ring in your nose and think that you're thinking about it yourself. And that's exactly what I did. And if you would have told me 15 years later, I was in a shopping mall in LA and I see these kids with ring in their nose, I said, forget it. It's all over. But that's how, so then when they see the Pepsi logo, Pepsi logo is exactly that. They're telling you to pay money for sugar and dye. It's shit. But they're saying, oh, you're on a sailboat, slow motion, all this stuff. They're spending all that money to get you to think that this is anything less than just sugar and carbonated water and crap, right? Kids pick that up. And so the guy from Pepsi got in real big trouble, got up the higher ranks and said, who sponsored this thing? One of our guys put this thing up and they fired him and they pulled out of sponsoring it because they're the ones that would buy all the prints. That's how it worked. Schools didn't buy it, the major sponsors like Exxon, whatever. And because it won, they put it in the film festival because the head of King Features said to me, he called me at home. I was at my parents' house at that point. And he said, if I saw the film you did, and he didn't even know they were doing it because he was the president. And he said, it's the best thing that we ever did.
Wow.
Ever. And he said that you have a home here. Like I could have stayed there forever, like do anything, except he got killed in a ski accident. It's not funny.
Oh.
Like soon after that, he went upside down in a dune. And,
oh man.
Yeah, but so then because it won every single award that it could possibly win, Chicago Film Festival, Atlanta Film Festival, anything they put it in, it was the top thing. And so Xerox came in as a sponsor. And you're not going to laugh at Xerox. They're not trying to sell you, force feeding you to buy a copy machine. So that's what got me going.
Yeah. And how old were you back then when you did that?
22.
Wow. Yeah. Now I watched it. Very impressive. I mean, it's funny because I love riff tracks. The guys from Mystery Science Theater, and they usually do these things where they make fun of what you were just talking about, all those ones they showed at schools. They didn't do one on yours, but I saw the Ringer and Blue Sunshine. It's an extra feature, and I
yeah.
well,
they wouldn't show mine. Mine was so different than all the ones you're talking about.
Yeah.
They wouldn't show it. It wouldn't make any sense. They'd shown the ones that were so
over the top. Yeah.
That were so badly disconnected from the kids. It's like, Johnny, are you smoking marijuana? I mean, they actually thought, I don't know what they were thinking, but so the Ringer was like a complete, they didn't expect it. And to this day, I have people telling me that the Ringer, obviously it's dated because it's 1971. But the idea of it is current. You still sell. I mean, look at the shit that people, all of a sudden, everybody, how long tattoos been going around? When I was a kid, the only people that had tattoos were bikers and somebody, was in the Navy or the Marines and they did it because they were drunk, Now, all of a sudden, all the young people have to have tattoos. It's the Ringer.
Yeah.
It's like, to me, I see young people all the time at festivals. I gravitate to, especially females that don't have any ink at all. That means they think for themselves. It doesn't mean that you can't think for yourself and get attracted, but more likely you'll do anything to follow the herd. That's why I came up with the ring. So when I see them with tattoos and rings in their nose, it's like a grand slam.
and and this had some stars, and this one was Rhoda's husband. I think his name is what, David Groh.
David Grohl.
Yep,
Yeah.
he was in there, and there's also another person I want to talk about. I don't know his name, but in the book you mentioned he was in the French Connection. He was an actor that just got out of prison at the time.
Charlie McGregor, the black guy with the bald head.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. As a matter of fact, I remember him saying to me, I said, like, why did you go to prison? He goes, well, I used to hold up people in the streets. Really? And he
Okay,
goes,
well,
he says, yeah. He says, I says, you ever kill anybody? He says, no, but he says, but I gotta tell you, if a guy like me wants your money, just give him the money. He says, because if you don't give him the money, and he's telling me what he would do, I go, okay, that's a good.
you're hired, and here's my wallet.
Yeah, there's no point. He's saying, what are you going to show off to your girlfriend? He's a professional. He's going to find a way to, if he can't knock you out, he'll pull out a gun and shoot you.
Oh yeah, I'd be handing over my wallet immediately. Here you go, sir.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Right.
And you actually had a cameo in this as well. Is that, you mentioned that you normally don't have cameos, your art is the cameo in the movies, but this is one that you were in for a bit.
I was in there because we couldn't get, somebody didn't show up, and it was like 0 out. It was so cold. It was unbelievable. And I had a cameo as a drug dealer. I'm in it,
Oh yeah.
It's like dealing drugs. Yeah,
No,
that's
no, you
my one and
mentioned.
only cameo.
Yep. Well, that's what I want to talk about because you said your art is in a lot of your other movies. What art did you? Because obviously, what kind of art did you have in the other movies? Maybe
What
I
do you
didn't
mean?
notice it because it said in the book that you're, or maybe I saw it in an interview when I was doing my research on you. It said that you usually don't do cameos. Your art is a cameo. Maybe I misunderstood
My
the way.
art?
Yeah, maybe I misunderstood the way it was said. I can't remember where I read that,
No,
but
I know. I never.
uh,
No, I never said that, but maybe somebody else said it, and what they mean is,
yeah,
my signature. I mean, the
yeah,
one thing that I have found pleasantly, and I try to tell this to people, do your own thing. They're always asking me, like, how do you do this? How do you do that? And say, don't. In fact, when I autograph my book,
Mhm.
I write, don't be like me. That's what I write. It's like, you know, I wouldn't want to be like somebody else, So, but if you do, my criteria for artists, it's not just filmmaking, it's any sculpture, anything,
Mhm.
is that you have a signature that you don't know you have.
Mhm.
You don't say, I think I'm going to do me, you just do your thing. And then the culminative work, somebody else, it always has to be somebody else says, I knew right away, like Brian De Palma. I don't
Oh
care
yeah.
what he fucking does. Brian directed it. You don't have to like it. And Quentin Tarantino, even though everybody says, oh, he's so derivative, he's derivative in his fucking way.
Mhm.
I know he doesn't do it, he's not creating a style, but by doing what came naturally to him, it's a Tarantino movie, and now people copy him.
Mhm.
You don't get that on one movie, but if you do a lot of one thing, painting or singing, Sinatra, he didn't say, gee, I'm going to work on having a signature voice, but it's Frank as soon as you hear it. And that's what Keith Richards' guitar. It's not like he's the best, but that's Keith's playing when you hear it. See,
Mhm.
so you can't teach that, and you can't. And if everybody could, you can have it and not make any money at it too, right? There's people, like say you're double jointed, you're the only one that could touch his asshole this way. You go, wow, you're one in a million, but no one's gonna pay for that. So it has to be something
Yeah.
Both things, and then also turn it into commerce somehow, you know.
Yeah. Well, you had a comment and something to the point of where you said like when people you hate when people say, dream it, just do it. It's like you have to have talent also. You can't just say I want to do this. You have to have some kind of talent behind it. I love that because it's so
Yeah, well,
true.
the tragedy in the entertainment business, they don't say this in anything else. They go, if you want it bad enough, and it's such a lie. It's
Hmm.
such a lie to tell young people. Like, say you happen to have genetics that you're a big bone girl, and you have a wide shoulders and everything. Oh, but I want to be a primo ballerina. It doesn't matter. You could get the best teachers and literally train every day for 5 years. You're not going to get close to
Yep.
ever being ever, right? It's not how hard you work and all that. Yeah, that's a component, but that's a component of people that are successful because they have the unusual talent, not just talent, but unusual. The more unusual it is, people will pay. Um, it's commerce. Then the more money they make.
Yep.
But you just working hard at it is such a lie, and it can screw up your life. If you go, well, I'm killing myself, and I'm 40 years old, and I can't get arrested. It's a lie. And then now what do you do, right?
Mhm. Yep.
When I wrote Squirm, it's the stupidest. Well, my wife said, I said, what do you think of this idea? And I told her, worms take over a town, lightning hits the ground. I mean, it sounds so stupid. And she said, it's the stupidest idea I ever heard. Now, I wrote the screenplay on spec. Nobody's going to pay me to do that. I never wrote a screenplay. I wrote it in longhand. She typed it up. And it was that was 1975. Well, it was shot in 75. I probably wrote it in 74.
Mhm.
If people read it and go, who is this idiot? Like, this is the stupidest thing I ever saw. Maybe I wouldn't have written another screenplay.
Mhm.
But as soon as people read it, two major producers wanted to option it and make it, not just option it. And then they paid me for the script $25,000. Like, what? So that's commerce. That's what I mean. Where somebody else, you could say the greatest writer, the only way to the arbiter of talent is money. Like Andy Warhol. Oh, it's just a soup can. Oh, yeah? If it's just a soup can, because you say you could have done it, but you didn't do it. He did do it. He
Yep.
saw what it was. So that's what I'm talking about. And then if I do enough, I said, well, if they're going to keep paying me for my thing, whatever this thing is, I don't have to do my thing on purpose. Now, what happens with actors, which is interesting, like Robert De Niro, they start doing them.
Mhm.
In other words, he's a huge talent, he's all over the place. And then he realizes the studio is giving him a certain type of pigeonhole role to play, Italian variations of the same thing, but they're
Mhm.
also giving him $15 million.
Yeah.
So he's going to walk through. He knows he can do it. He can't fuck up because that's what they want him to do. And then the whole thing just becomes, I can't. I hate when I see that happen. It's happened to a lot. The only person that didn't do that, I think, Dustin Hoffman
Mhm.
didn't do it, but because he wasn't known, maybe he was never known for one thing. He was always playing different kind of thing. But and then you got the other guys like John Wayne. You put a hat on him, he's a fireman. You put a uniform on him, he's a soldier. You put a Western thing, he's a cowboy, and he's still, well, where's for dinner? He's the same exact guy. There's those guys. Clint
Yeah.
Eastwood, when he acted, the same guy. You
Mhm.
can see Clint Eastwood playing a stand-up comic.
No.
So anyway,
Well, speaking of Dustin Hoffman, you had a chance to work with him during the Tootsie period.
yeah. Well, no, it was
Around there. Around.
yeah, it was after Tootsie.
Oh, because yeah, he went to Hook, I think, right?
Yeah, he was doing Hook. Well, he was doing Hook. Yeah, that was the period when he did
Yeah.
Hook.
Yeah.
And so I wrote I had an idea for a movie, and at that point, people kind of knew my writing really. And Murray Shisco, a playwright who was the head of Dustin's company, came into pitch. I came into pitch, and then he said, "We never do this, but Dustin's going to be in town, and I want you to pitch it directly to him." And once he heard the idea, and I did, and boom, I got a deal at TriStar, and I wrote it with Murray, and it was a good idea for him. He would play the lead in the guy in a nursing home in the future, but a high end, like a, over 55, like a senior living place for rich people.
Mm-hmm.
And this guy, so Dustin would play like an 85-year-old man in makeup. And at that point, back then, he was probably 60. So he played both roles because the old guy goes back in time and meets a 60-year-old. So he'd have to play both characters. And they loved it, and the studio loved the script when I finished it. And then what Dustin did was he was doing Hook. So he says to Spielberg, without showing him a script or anything, he says he pitched it to him. Now, actors pitching anything is a mistake. But to pitch that, he said to him, Spielberg said, it sounds like Back to the Future. Mm-hmm. Which it would if you don't know any better.
Yeah.
And then he went to Barry Levinson because he did Rain Man. Mm-hmm. And he wants to get a director before he commit. Now that he has a script, he wants to get a director attached. And Barry Levinson said, when you did the 100-year-old man or whatever that was, the old Indian, he says, you complained all the time to me that you had to, not that Barry directed that, but he knew him well. And he said that you were in makeup half the time, 5 hours of makeup to make you look old. And in what you're telling me, you're never going to be playing with the other self of you. You're going to be playing in blue screen.
Yeah.
Right. So they talked him out of it. So by the time it's like Murray says, well, Dustin will be a producer, but I knew there goes the movie, because without him as a star, it's just another script out there. And that's what happened.
Yeah.
So it was a shame because it was good.
Yeah. Well, before we get to Squirm, I want to talk about the encounters you had with Dino De Laurentiis. You had two, anyway, that you mentioned in the book. The first one is when you wanted to update Flash Gordon.
Yeah, I never met him.
Yeah, no, I know that, but you didn't really meet him. But he was making your life miserable without him even knowing it.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
It was the company that said we could do, we want to do anything with you because I did The Ringer. That was King Features, and they owned Flash Gordon. So I said, okay, how about taking Flash Gordon and modernizing it, a 2001 Space Odyssey, so you got robots shooting ray guns at each other like in Flash Gordon, only it's modern. It's not cartoony, like that 30s or 40s Flash Gordon stuff. They have laser rifles instead of, plastic stupid things. Mm-hmm. And he said that that's funny because the guy came in here, the guy that did American Graffiti wanted to do exactly the same thing. And I have to tell you what I told him is that we already optioned it to Dino De Laurentiis. And I said, to do what? And he said, to do Flash Gordon the way it was done. I said, that's the worst fucking idea. Why would you want to do that? Well, we already made the deal. And they wound up doing Flash Gordon. But yeah. What George Lucas did was he said, okay, I won't call him Flash Gordon. He did the exact same thing he was going to do and call it Luke Skywalker. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So you could say, how come I didn't do that? Well, that's why he's George Lucas and I'm not.
Yep. Then there was one other time, at least you mentioned in the book, with you, John Lennon, and Stevie Wonder, King Kong the musical.
Yeah. I met, my father would put on these big testimonial dinners for charities. And at this one, it was Armored Erdogan, this big Atlantic Records. It's a very powerful guy in the music business. So everybody was there, including John Lennon. I went in the VIP area and I was stoned, which I always was back then, pot, not always, but at any occasion. And I see another guy, two guys that are stoned, the other guy's stoned. And I saw him, he saw me, and he made a smile, I smile. And we're talking, and then I realized that we have King Kong, the movie, King Kong, 16 millimeter, Janus. The black and white, it was done in what, 36 or something?
Something like that, yeah.
I said, hey, John, do you know what King Kong was about? And he says, certainly the white man's fear of the black man. I said, bingo. I said, what about a musical? I pitched right there.
I love it.
And I said, and here's the thing, and it just came to me while I was standing there. I said, King Kong in the movie, they have all these guys with the drums, Kong, 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 and then the Kong comes. Well, we're going to have on the Broadway stage, we're going to have guys that look like the Temptations, only like 30 of them with pink tuxedos doing Motown steps to Motown music. And then King Kong is going to come out. And I said, there's going to be two agents. While I'm standing there, just picturing a show that didn't exist, obviously. And they're going to go to like Club Med for, like a vacation. The guy says, hey, why don't we go on a safari instead of Club Med? And the agents are William Morris. And then they find this King Kong. So anyway, and I said, and you do the music for the musical. And I said, and we get Stevie Wonder, and he does the black music, and you do the white music. And he's standing and looking at me like, I remember thinking, look, he could be like goofing, it's like being polite, or he could be smiling. It was like a Mona Lisa type thing. What am I gonna do? I already committed to this crazy thing. And it turned out that he loved it. And he wanted to have a meeting with his lawyer the next day. I got a phone call at 2 a.m. And I go into the office at Janus and go, well, we don't have the rights to a Broadway show, but we can get them. I said, what do you mean? You said we have the rights, period. That's why we come up with stuff. No, we don't, but I know the lawyer, and I'll say it's an emergency. And RKO, which King Kong and all those movies, they were bought by General Tires. So General Tires owned King Kong, Laurel and Hardy, all the stuff that RKO did, Citizen Kane, at that one period of time. So he gets the lawyer for General Tires. Well, I'm supposed to meet John Lennon at 1 o'clock at Danny's Hideaway. We're eating lunch at 12 o'clock at the Sherry Netherland with this guy. And he says, I could give you those rights, but the same thing. He says, it's already option to do a movie, a remake of the movie. I said, why the hell would you want to make a remake of the movie? It's a great movie. Like, what? Oh, it's going to be in color? Like it's King Kong. And on Broadway, I will have a big foot. And I said, and the Klieg lights on opening night. I had this whole thing. And Pat Birch, choreographer, she had 3 shows on Broadway. She was the wife of the Janus Films chairman, Bill Becker. So we got a choreographer, and they called Hal Prince. He would direct it. I mean, it was like, it would be instant Broadway producer time for me. Of course, no book or anything. And he says, yeah, well, I can't really do it because the guy is, he's a serious guy, and he optioned it. And it was a lot of money. It's like 100 and something thousand. And Saul Terrell, who I was with, he was the president of Janus. He said, I'll match it right now. We'll go up to the office. And that, to his credit, he would write out a big check like that. And he says, I gotta, wait until this guy's options runs out. I said, well, who is this guy? I went, we're dead. He's gonna make it. he's gonna fucking make it, and he did,
That
and it sucked.
bastard.
And so, but that was the Jessica Lange movie, right?
Yeah, with Jeff Bridges.
So
I
then
remember
we
seeing. I remember seeing it at the drive-in.
had to call that off.
Oh,
Call
man.
off meeting.
Did you ever have a chance to maybe not meet him, but ever speak with him and tell him that what he was doing to you back then?
No, no. You mean afterwards?
Yeah, Dino. Like maybe years later, did you ever talk to him and say like,
No,
"Oh,
no.
okay, I was just
It
curious."
wasn't funny. Yeah.
Well, the one thing, and I love what you said. You said it's better to be a writer and then being it's much easier than being a director for hire. So you're a great writer. You wrote some great scripts, and I want to talk about one of the movies you made. You mentioned it earlier was Squirm. I love that movie. I rewatched it again recently, and I know your wife at the time said it was the stupidest movie ever made, and you put it aside
Oh,
for 2 years.
uh.
Oh no, sorry.
Yeah.
That's what I meant. Sorry, I didn't mean to say that. Stupidest idea. So I take that back. And you actually put it aside for 2 years. Is that correct?
Yeah, I put it aside because we had no money. I
Yeah.
had a job. So that's why I went to that's why I
Jan.
say I don't really know when I wrote Squirm. It could have been 73 for all I know, because I put it aside. It was on a legal pad. I mean, it wasn't even typed up. And I went to work at Janus Films. I commuted to Janus Films. And I did. That's when I worked with Rod Serling and that era. That's that time period.
Yeah.
But uh, and then I went back to it and finished the script.
Right. Well, you mentioned some producers were interested in it. The producers, Edgar Lansbury, who's Angela's brother, and then Joseph, I might pronounce his name incorrectly. Is it Baru?
Rue, yeah.
Baru. So how did they come across this, and did they approach you and say, we like this and we want to finance
No,
it?
the guy who was the producer on Who Killed Mary Western,
Uh,
who knew me from commercials and put me on as a location scout, he called me out of the blue. We talk about kismet. I mean, I would have found my way with that script. It was the right time for a script like that.
mm-hmm.
It had nothing to do with Jaws. You know,
Yeah.
people say, oh, the animal attack movie. But when I wrote that script, all I was thinking of is the birds,
Mm-hmm.
50s. I mean, there's no Jaws yet. And he called me and he said that he's working with these people that did a movie on called The Wild Party with Raquel Welch, Broadway producers, and they're looking for a low budget horror movie to take to Cannes. And like specifically, and they want to go to the next Cannes, which is March, and this was the spring, so you have to make the movie sometime in October. And then, you know, like they didn't have the movie, they didn't have a script, but they knew that this was their plan to go to Cannes with a movie that's sellable. At that time, you can go in the market and you can make back your investment by foreign sales. Then you got all of America. It sounds good on paper, but that's the plan because Ivan Reitman just had done that with Shivers. That's where they got that idea. And just timing wise, I said, well, I just happen to have the script. And he read it. He said, this is exactly what they're looking for. I'll call you tonight. He gave it to me. And it was like, boom. And then Ed Pressman, who I knew from another project, and he was a big producer, I mean, after that, but he wanted it. So I had two producers that wanted to make the movie. They had the money to make the movie, let alone option it on my first script.
Wow.
How bad could it be?
Not bad at all. And you also had well, the makeup artist was Rick Baker.
Yeah.
One of the best. And as you mentioned, it was the first time he used prosthetics in his career.
Yeah. Yeah. He had done, again, the way things interrelate. The reason that he wasn't on location is because he had to do King Kong for who?
Oh,
Billy Rentis. Isn't that amazing?
oh my God.
But he made all the prosthetics, and then he had this guy Norman Page go down to Georgia to do the shoot. He was never at the location.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I want to get into some of the facts because there's so many great points about this, but there's one story that in the book I found hilarious. You were doing a test. You were filming it yourself just to see how scary it might look on film. You went to go pick up the film and to see what it looked like. What happened?
You know, back then nobody had video cameras.
Yeah.
So you had an 8mm, home movie camera. And so I took real worms because I was concerned. Now I'm going to make my first movie, and this is real deal, with real money. I don't know if worms really, like maybe I'm conning them, and people go, it's worms. It's like, what's so scary? So I had to figure out, I had to make myself believe that I could do it. And so I bought a dozen worms, and my daughter was little and she had dolls, and I put the worms all over I pulled the eye out and put the worms coming out of the eye. I shot it in 8mm. And back then you took it to the drugstore,
Yeah.
the film. And then they tell you 6 days later, they develop it and you come back. And so I did that, and I come back and I'm all excited and turn the lights down and put it on. And it's this little kid's birthday party with the grandmother. It's all silent, right? I went, what the fuck? They lost my film. And then I went, wait a minute. If we're looking at that, that means that little girl's family got the worms coming out of it's true story.
I love it.
So they got the first glimpse of Squirm.
And did you ever get your film back?
No,
Never did.
fortunately, I shot 2 reels, and I had
Okay,
the,
good.
which I
Nice.
have.
So when you were filming the movie, how many of the worms were real and how many were fake?
$250,000 each.
Wow.
So imagine manufacturing $250,000 is one thing, but to get $250,000 glyceria, the ones that bite, the sandworms that are like saltwater worms, we basically bought out the whole. By the time the following spring came, nobody could get up and down the East Coast. There was this giant shortage of worms because nobody said, "Oh, give me $250,000 worms to go." Couldn't
Well,
buy them all at one time, but because you couldn't keep them alive, but they were constantly shipping them down to Georgia.
yep. And tell my viewers what the movie was based on. It was a childhood incident with you and your brother that inspired this movie.
Yeah, well, it was incident. It was my brother read in Popular Mechanics. He says Popular Mechanics, Popular Science, one of those magazines we used to read, and that you can get worms out to go fishing. You take a metal pipe, pound it into the ground, and then hook up a Lionel train transformer, the leads onto the metal, and then wet the ground around it. And then when you zap it, highest voltage, the worms will come out of the ground. You have to do this at night. Then you turn on a light and you grab them up, and it works. So we did that, and I was there. He goes, okay, we had a big area. We have an overground pool, those standalone backyard pools that you take down in the winter. So
Yeah.
it leaves giant, muddy, no grass, just dirt. And wetted it all down. And we had a pool light on a pole. So it was a perfect setup. He's got the transformer. He goes, okay, I'm going to zap him. And he says, turn the light on. I turn the light on. It's all these worms. Like, it was scared the shit out of me. And then we had to gather them up because then they're gonna go back down. And so then I always say, well, I had that idea, and then 10 years later I took LSD. Somehow it's that incident on acid is the movie Squirm. It's the only. So that's where it came from. As a matter of fact, on one of the I did Shout Factory, put it out on Blu-ray, and I said, I will let you use my commentary under one condition, that I go to my house back in Valley Stream where I came up with the idea of not where I came to the idea of the movie, but where this incident happened. And they said, oh, and shoot it, recreate it, and so on that extra, it's called Eureka. I actually went back to the house, to the backyard, and said, here's where we did this, here's where we did that, and worms came out. Yeah.
All right. I got to check that one out then. I didn't listen to the commentary. I saw some of the behind the scenes on one of the DVDs that I have,
No,
but
it's not the commentary. It's
oh,
it's an extra,
oh, extra.
video extra.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I got to check that one out. Well, you said the original setting was in New England, but what happened?
It was just timing. It was like um, by the time the money got together and everything, it's like to shoot it in November. I said, I don't want cold and snow and no leaves on the trees. I want a claustrophobic feeling. I
Yeah.
always, I always envisioned it in the summertime, in New England. That's how I wrote it. And they said, well, we're running out by the time we start shooting it, like November 1st or something like that, or 10th. There's no way we can shoot it 6 weeks into the winter.
Yeah.
So that's how we wound up in Georgia. But the big thing was that I had to rewrite the script, every character. Now it's down south, except for Don Scardino. He's going to be from the north either way.
Yeah.
But every other character had to be southern. And what do I know? Nothing.
Well, it worked out very well for you. I love, and the cast in the movie is excellent. I love the people that were in the movie, but there's three people that that wanted to be in the movie, and for reasons we'll get into, or not. We'll start with Kim Basinger.
Yeah, well, she came in, she was a model out of the Ford model agency. She never did any acting. And she was 21 years old and she was a knockout. And she was from Georgia and was shooting in Georgia. So she already has the southern thing down.
Yeah.
And she said, I said, there's a shower scene. Just want you to know, little nudity. She goes, I have no problem with my body. And I'm telling you, she was smoking hot.
Oh
So
yeah.
then she leaves. The producer says, so what do you think, Lieberman? And I went, who's going to believe that she lives next door to a worm farm? It's like I'm trying to be realistic. I said, it's going to be like Daisy May, like Little Abner. It's like a cartoon. They went, okay. What a stupid, it's about worms. Nobody is going to, you think that some 17-year-old kid is you're gonna go, gee, but I don't really believe that she lives next to a worm farm. I also don't really believe that worms are gonna come out of the ground. And it's like it was just I was stupid, but they, because they were Broadway people, they weren't movie people.
Yeah.
The Godspell and the magic show, and subject was real serious stuff. They deferred to the author instead of saying schmuck. They went, oh, okay, I could see that.
Well, another one that wanted to be in the movie was Martin Sheen.
Yeah, he came in because he was in The View from the Bridge. They gave him a star, or Subject Was Roses. They gave him his star. I said, great. And then I met with him and he wants to do, he's like a serious, actor studio guy. And he says, what does Mick do for a living? And I said, I don't know. He goes down. I didn't even know what backstory was or character. Believe me, when I wrote Squirm, I knew nothing.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, he comes down. I'm just telling him the plot. It's just a guy from New York. He goes, okay, what if he's an actor? Okay, he could have said, what if he's a plumber? I would have said, okay. I didn't know any better. And he said, okay, if he's an actor, and the scene where he breaks into the dentist's office and holds up the skull, how about if he says, alas, poor Yurok, I knew him well. And I'm thinking, Jesus, this guy's going to come in and do Shakespeare. And I got 4 weeks with people and 1 week with worms. I can't do that. And I said to the producers, like, that's going to be a problem. And they said, okay, and they got rid of him. Instead of saying, schmuck, all you got to do is tell him, you're right, he's an actor, but you don't have to waste time on the thing with the skull.
Yeah.
So my only excuse is, once you say you're an idiot, I mean, where do you go from there? But I was 20. Oh yeah, I could say I was a young man.
Exactly. We'll go with that. I
was 25 and I just didn't know shit.
Yeah. Well, there's one more person that was, you didn't think he was right for the role. Who was that?
Stallone.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was working as a waiter in New York, and he wrote Rocky. He was waiting to get a deal. And my friend from Janice, John Poole, used to work out with him at a gym. So he knew him. And
Yeah.
he called me as a special favor. He said, "Oh, you're doing a movie, and could you just see my friend Sly, just because he's depressed and he's got no money, and just to, keep him in the business." And I happened to see a movie called Sexual Freedom in Brooklyn, which you might know as how was his name? They changed the name of the movie that he was in, and Susan Blakely and Henry Winkler.
Oh, Lords of Flatbush.
Lords of Flight. They
Yeah, yeah.
changed it after they finished the movie. It was called Sexual Freedom in Brooklyn. And
Okay.
so I happened to see it because that guy who made that movie was trying to get money, asking me for money, and anybody that they knew in New York City that was in the business, no matter who you were, invest in that movie. So I saw the rough cut. It was shot in 16. So
Yeah.
I knew who Stallone was, and I was impressed with what I saw. But he was a hood, it's like he's never going to play the character of Roger, the local hick down there. He just,
Yeah.
there's no way. And I said, I don't want to jerk him off and have him down there. So I didn't even have him down there to even try it. So I could have had, if I wanted to, for the same money, I could have had Kim Basinger, Stallone, and the funny thing is, it's not like the movie would be any better, but it would be 10 times more famous, and I'd be 10 times richer.
Yep.
And that's how it works,
You can say like the person that discovered, Kim
Yeah.
Basinger.
No, it's not even the discover. It's the fact that when you make a TV sale after Rocky,
Yep.
you have a movie
That has the names on it.
stars Sylvester Stallone. It's like the public doesn't care that they made it before that. They're gonna pay a fortune for the movie.
Mm-hmm.
It's the way it works.
Yeah. Well, I found this interesting. Well, there's a lot of interesting facts, but one of the facts is, where do screams of the worms come from? The worm screams.
Oh yeah, we couldn't find what are worms? You have to ask an ant. Like what what noise does worms make? And the hell is my dog is barking at nothing. Could you cut for a
Yeah,
second?
yeah. I said the screams of the worms came from a source that I wasn't familiar with.
So we couldn't, you're making something up. Worms don't scream, but the mouth opens up. So I figured to make it scary, you don't just want to see the mouths open. You want to have a sound that goes with it. And Danny Sable, who's the sound man, nothing was working. And then I said, "Do you have any stock things that he's trying to create sounds?" And he did all of Brian De Palma's early movies, and so he said that in Carrie they used a pig being slaughtered for some scene with the blood or something. So let me hear it. I heard that. I said, sync that up every time, and it works great. That's what it is.
Yeah. No, yeah, it sounds great. And like you said, it works well. Did the film have an issue with the MPAA at the time?
Yeah, they said that they gave it an R rating, and there's no violence, no nudity to require an R rating instead of a PG rating. They said it's the ick factor. It was made up.
I know
It cost a lot of money because back then they were very strict about who can come, under 18 or whatever the thing.
yeah.
So we had to actually cut it, or they cut it to make it PG. But there was an R version first.
Yeah, but said originally the film was cut to receive a PG rating, but still received an R. And then in 1977 they cut it. So when it was first released,
the original movie was R.
Yeah, and then they
released as R, and then they cut it to make it PG so they can get into more theaters.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I'm guessing the DVD version that I saw recently is the R version.
That I don't know. Why don't you see the Blu-ray? Much better.
Okay, I'll definitely check that out.
Matter of fact, Kino just put out the Blu-ray really cheap. They just they just, because they had a license from me, my commentary, they just put out the Shout Factory Blu-ray, and that looks way better than the DVD.
Okay, I'll definitely be checking that out. Well, you mentioned, well, let's go back. One of my favorite TV shows of all time has to be Twilight Zone. And I've had Ann Serling on this show. We talked about Rod. You had a chance to work with him. It was called The Art of the Film when you were with Janice. I want to talk about that because you said exactly what Ann was saying and other people that have met him. I've been to Serling Fest, which is a Twilight Zone convention. It's in his hometown, and everybody said he had the best sense of humor, which nobody would really know. Even Ann was saying from the TV show, he seems so serious, but you said that as well. He's a really funny guy.
Yeah, well, he was a funny guy, but not the one thing that we initially bonded on. Once he got comfortable with me, he just out of the blue, he says, a Pollock and a rabbi and a zebra walk in the bar, and I start cracking up. I'm laughing because this is Rod Serling telling me a Polish joke. He thought, he doesn't know, oh, I'm Rod Serling telling, because he is Rod Serling.
Yeah.
He thought I like Polish jokes, which I think is stupid. They're just stupid jokes. Anybody, you're blonde, and they're dumb. And so he, every time I see him, he had a new Polish joke for me. One time he called up on Janice when we got to really be comfortable with each other. They say, it's Rod Serling on 2. You know, those phones, they used to have these buttons. I hit 2 and he goes, a Polak and a magician. I wish I had a recording of these things.
That's hilarious. And one of the things that impresses me so much about you is that you're able to talk people into doing different things that they don't want to do. And there's one time with Rod Serling, it's about the Olympiad, and he had a lovely nickname for Hitler's personal Nazi propaganda filmmaker. What was that all about?
Leni Riefenstahl.
Yeah.
She did Triumph of the Will and Olympia, and she was a Nazi. And basically, nobody was a Nazi after the war. But if you asked her, are you a Nazi? The Fuhrer, yeah, that was her boss. And so when I used it in a film, and then Rod, we were in the studio, and Rod had to read the copy, and then he says, he goes, Leni Riefenstahl. And this is totally out of the blue because he never read this before. And he goes, Leni Riefenstahl, that Nazi cunt. Says, I'm not reading this. And what the fuck? And then I said, take 5. I took him out in the hall. Told him, this is called The Art of Film. It's not the personal life of the filmmakers. This is a very important, whether you like it or not, the montage that you see today, cutting on action, is so in sports, you see it today, that's what they do. They make these montages of guys doing the hurdles, whatever that she did the very first montage in sports. That's why it's in there. So, and it was just Olympia. That's what we were using, and it was in editing. And I said, now when you talk about the personal part, she was going to LA for something, and she was stopping off in New York so she could see what I did in editing her piece, because she gave permission. And she came to Janus Films in New York in 5th Avenue. And we were on the 5th floor, and we had the editing room in the back. And I get a call. I didn't know she was coming. And Saul Terrell, the president, he says, Leni Riefenstahl is here. I said, here? What do you mean here? Here, in the building. In my office, like she wants to take a look at. I said, Saul, don't say anything, but I'm telling you, if I come in there and meet her, she's going to shake my hand. It's like, that's a natural thing. I could shake her hand, or I might hold on to it and fling her right out the fucking window. And we're on the 5th floor. And I said it in such a serious way, I don't know what I'm going to do. So I take the chance. To this day, I don't know. I'm going to shake a hand of a major Nazi and say, how do you do? And he said, so he started crying. He goes, oh, you made that lunch appointment? He started lying in front of her. And okay, and it was 11:30, you know, and I'm like, I left. So the editor showed it to her, but without me there. So I said that to Rod. He goes, "That's what you did?" And I said, "That's what I did." He goes, "Fuck you, Jeff. Let's do it." And, you know, he's like, he was pissed off and put it out, his cigarette. And we went in, and I remember telling the engineer, "Don't fuck this up because he's going to do it once. You can't ask him to do it a second time."
I love that story.
So
I want to move on. What was that?
I think I told Ann, his daughter. I think I told her that.
Oh, yeah, no, she was great. I love talking to her, and it's funny because I think in the book you mentioned the dummy with Rod, and that was one of the things that she brought up because she said when she was a kid, it was just a fun little toy, and Daddy brought it home, and next thing you know, I'm watching the show. I didn't realize how scary it was. But what was the
The
story
actual
with him?
dummy from
Yeah,
the episode.
yeah.
Yeah, so I was having a drink with him at the St. Moritz when we, you know, when he was in town to do these things. And I said, let me ask you something. When you did the Twilight Zone, we're using a thing that I'm blanking on the Dead of Night.
Hmm.
And one of the sequences in the Dead of Night is a guy ventriloquist with a puppet, right? That's one of the major stories, the best one.
Yep.
It was a compilation, I think it was 4 separate stories, and they all come together at the end. So I said, didn't you do a Twilight Zone, which would be way after, with a guy with a puppet? Same idea where he goes crazy and the Oscar, you know, and the puppet takes on his own personality. And he says, yes, I did. That's correct. And the Dead of Night, I said, so it came, that's where you got the idea. And he goes, when you steal from the best.
All right.
So I went, yeah, okay. He didn't go like, I don't know, I wasn't thinking of it. It's my own. No, it's just like, that's what he did.
Well, I want to talk about the next movie, Blue Sunshine. So, how did Joanne's learning about Lamaze' natural childbirth method help inspire the script?
Uh, well, they called it Lamaze, now they call it natural childbirth, but it was, you know, the idea is that you're trying to pretend that the guy has something to do with it, right?
Yeah.
But really, it's all we didn't have a baby, you know, all of a sudden we're reinventing the childbirth. She's gonna have a baby. But anyway, so I said, I'm not going to fucking classes. And I went once, the first class I went to, and it was like this gymnasium with they looked like beached whales, all these pregnant women on the back, you know. I said, I don't need this. But she kept going. She did it. And
Yep.
then so I didn't know anything. She said, water broke. We're going to the hospital. And they said, oh, come in. There's a pre-delivery. I mean, if I just went to the classes, I'd know all this, but I knew nothing. I go in and her feet are up in the stirrups because they have to dilate. I'd never heard any of this language before. And I looked between her legs and I said, and the nurse is saying, isn't that a beautiful? Babies could be beautiful. We didn't know back then, you didn't even know the sex unless you did an amnio thing, which you don't do when you're young. So
Mhm.
we had no idea it's a boy and a girl. And I'm looking, there ain't no human part that looks like that. It looked like the closest thing, it was like a matted, it looked like black feathers, and it was sort of cylindrical, right?
Mm.
And the only thing that I ever saw in my life is I saw nature films of baby sparrows, you know, cracking out of the eggs.
Mhm.
So we're gonna have a fucking bird. And then I realized, because I took acid and the LSD thing, you know, you get flashback, the chromosomes. What if they're right? You know, they said, oh, it's gonna make you, you know, the chromosomes gonna be fucked up, all those fear things, like the sci-fi movies, to keep you from taking LSD. So I'm thinking, shit, they were right. And I have genetic damage, and we're having a fucking bird. And you know, it sounds funny, but it was the scariest moment of my life because my parents were in the waiting room. I have to go out and break it to them. You know, look, we're having a bird. I'm gonna get the best cage. I'm gonna like the best, you know, best swing that money can buy. I didn't know what to say. I figured it's like Big Bird. It's gonna come up, and then the baby obviously is not a bird,
Yeah.
and I couldn't believe when that baby came out. Obviously, it's a girl, but I didn't even. My brain was so. I thought it was gonna come out like flapping wings and stuff, and so it didn't. It took me a long time to register. Oh, by the way, it's a girl. It's like
Yeah.
I'm looking. It has fingers and cuticles. I mean, anyway, I'm fucked up. Well, why are we even doing this? You're talking to an idiot.
I love
True
this.
story. True story. And then, so I figured, okay, if I was so scared, and I'm a semi-hip guy, it's no fun to make fun of the government. It's so obvious to me how
Hmm.
they come up. What if they're right?
Yeah.
That's scary.
I like that.
That's how I got the idea of Blue Sunshine. What if they're right and there is a chromosome damage? It's not like if you do the Bible, you go, oh yeah, and then Charlton Heston, it's like bullshit, right?
Hmm.
So you have to do it in a way to go, well, what if they're right? What if it's real? Otherwise, it's too easy. It's not funny because you're already laughing at it.
Yeah.
That's what I did with that, and still today, I mean, people love it.
Yeah. Was it well received from the very beginning?
Oh, that was not nearly as good because it didn't get picked up by a a major studio. Once you don't have it picked up by a major studio, uh, then you're just another independent movie. But in that particular case, they used to do a thing called the movie of the week on
Yep.
TV. And you know what they paid? The movie cost $550,000 to make back then. Okay,
Mhm.
which was Chainsaw. All the movies were made for that amount, but with inflation, it's more like 2.5 million today's money. But still, and they would pay you $1 million for 2 runs on the major networks, and it was only 3 networks. They were all doing it. All 3 networks wanted Blue Sunshine. They showed it at Cannes. They
Mhm.
wanted it prime time movie of the week, right? So then the producer was saying, "Fuck the theatrical. We'll put it out in Europe. They sold it in all the countries. We'll make a TV deal. It'll be the movie of the week. Premiere that way." And I'm thinking, oh, I own 10%. The movie, $500,000 gets paid back, and then I'm going to get 10% of 500,000, like 50 grand extra. So I'm like gung ho, great.
Yeah.
And then we go and we get a list of things the censors want. Like today, that movie would be like G rated.
Hmm.
And back then, they were cracking down on low budget movies that if we made the cuts, it would be 40 minutes long and it would suck.
Hmm.
And all 3 networks, they say, yeah, we want to buy it, but
Yeah.
then so CBS put it on late night after 11 o'clock movie network. Same thing, only instead of paying the primetime money, they paid like 95,000.
Yeah.
And that's what happened. So it was on CBS.
Yeah.
And then after a while, because of the foreign, it gained notoriety. And I found the negative 10 years ago. The negative was gone. So nobody could see it in any form other than VHS. And
Mhm.
then the negative turned out not only in Seattle in a warehouse, but in pristine condition. So we did a 4K scan. And it's next month, the Manchester Fantasy Film Festival in England is their opening film is Blue Sunshine. I'm going to be
Wow.
there. And not only that, but here's is this Kismet or I don't know what they have names for all this shit. But when I did Blue Sunshine, the next office was Howard Godfrey and Patty Chayefsky, and they did Hospital.
Yeah.
And they did Network in Altered States.
Hmm.
It's right there, one door away. So I knew Howard and I'd see Patty. they did Altered States 2 years after I did Blue Sunshine, but they gave me an office after Blue Sunshine at Edgar Lansbury.
Yeah.
So I would see the pre-production of Altered States with Ken Russell.
Mhm.
Guess what? Next month, the opening film in Manchester is Blue Sunshine. The closing film is Altered States.
I love it.
Go figure. That's really amazing. I mean, I just told them that, and they just gonna make a big deal out of it. It's true.
You've,
Like,
as I mentioned several times, you've had an amazing life, and there's sometimes it didn't work out, but other times it just everything fell right into place. The planets aligned, and
yeah, you have no control.
no, exactly. And this is another movie where you wanted to film it in one place, which was New York City, but you had to film it in another area. And what was the reason for that?
Yeah, it was just money.
Yeah,
That
okay.
the original budget at that time was like 3 million, and with the subways in New York City and permits and everything, and Sam Arkoff was going to fund it, the AIP, because he did so well with Squirm, and he liked me, but his son nixed it
Ah,
for whatever reason, and so we wound up shooting in LA. And here's an interesting thing: if you want, you can buy the paperback book right now,
mhm.
but they're cheap. But it's how you buy these what do they call those? The promotional, the paperback soon to be motion picture.
Oh yeah, yeah. I
Yeah.
know.
So they used to do. So there's a company out in California that reissues those books or makes new ones based on a movie. They reissued Squirm, the paperback, and Blue Sunshine. But the Blue Sunshine one, I realized, wait a second, well, Squirm and all the other ones are a paperback based on the movie.
Mhm.
In this case, for whatever reason, the writer didn't get to see the movie. He wrote it based on the screenplay. So the paperback is based on my original screenplay that takes place in New York. It's pretty cool.
I, I'm
So
gonna
if
have to
you
look.
ever have curiosity of, you're not going to read the screenplay that I wrote, but this is the closest thing to it. They meet in the subways, and the whole thing takes place in New York in the paperback.
I do have the curiosity, and I'm going to be looking for that. Can I find that on Amazon?
Yeah, sure.
All right, I'm going to
The,
be
the,
looking.
the company's name, it's like encyclop, some play on the word encyclopedia. But you can, if you Google it, you'll see the name of it.
Yeah,
But
I'll find
it
it.
doesn't matter. You can get it on Amazon.
Yeah, I'm definitely gonna be checking it out. Now, you have so many great stories with different celebrities, different interesting people. So I'm not gonna go through all of them, obviously. I want people to read the book. It's a great book. I highly recommend everybody buy it. But
No,
there's
but,
one.
here's the thing about my book,
Okay.
Day of the Living Me.
Mhm.
If you buy it from me,
Okay.
because I could sign it for you. If you buy it on Amazon, I have no control over it. So you buy it from me, and here's the telethon in New York. The number it's JeffLiebermanDirector.com, all one word. I repeat, JeffLiebermanDirector.com. Did you hear what I said? Remember they used to do that?
Oh yes.
The number in New York is JeffLiebermanDirector.com. And you're in Connecticut? JeffLiebermanDirector.com, all one word. Act now, and if you act now, you get an upright Lewitt vacuum cleaner.
I think we should do an infomercial for that. I like that. You're very good at it. But there was one. Well, I'm going to want to go over a couple of them. But one of the ones that I thought was hilarious, and I would love to see what he was. I mean, it sounds like he was a fun guy in person. But George Burns.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I want to talk about that because at the time he was brought on to narrate Robert Stigwood's Sergeant Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band. He was playing Mr. Kite. How did you end up going on a double date with him?
Yeah. Oh, so I had done Tommy, the movie Tommy. I had done the ad campaign, Tommy, the movie, Your Senses Will Never Be the Same with the Cork.
No.
I that's the only advertising I ever did, and they used the whole thing. So they wanted me to do the Sergeant Pepper thing, and I really didn't want to do it. And they said, then I find out that a younger woman that was my age, was working for the ad agency, and she was dating George Burns, who was 80. She was like 32. So was I. I said, really? So I said, okay, here's the deal. I'll do the advertising. The movie sucked, but you got George Burns. The reason I got George Burns, they did the movie, it didn't make any sense. I saw that movie without George Burns. And everybody said, you can't follow, it's nothing. You can't follow, it's the PG singing, there's no story. So they had to get a narrator. So they got to tell you the story. So they got George Burns because he was hot because of Oh God.
Yeah.
I set up a double date when I'm in LA, and she did. And so she got a girlfriend that she knew was gonna be my date. It's like a beard, right? It's not real.
Yeah.
And she's gonna, and we went to George's house, and it was, I couldn't, I went to, ring the doorbell. I'm going, yeah, I'm cool, it's George Burns. And all of a sudden, I realized what I'm about to do. This is fucking George Burns' house. He can open the door. I was like, I freaked out. And then there he was with a cigar, and at first he was so cold to me that he's probably had an argument with her, saying, "What the fuck? What are we double dating for? Like, I don't know these people. You're doing it as a favor."
Yeah.
And so I could sense it. Like, this is gonna be a long night. He's basically ignoring me, and this couple comes in just to say hello to him. They're from the movie company or the advertising, and they said, the typical stuff. Oh, we love you, and we've seen all your movies, and George, how did you get into show business? You started in radio, didn't you? And he says, he thinks about it. That's the thing. And it's like, here's a cigar. And he's thinking about it like nobody ever asked him that question 8,000 times. He goes, well, I asked Gracie how her sister was doing. She talked for the next 20 years. I'm sitting over there. I knew he's doing this. That's a setup. He needs somebody else to say, well, how did you get into television? Otherwise, he's dead. He said, so how did you get into television? He looks at me. He goes, I asked Gracie how her cousin was doing. She talked for the next 20 years, right? At that moment, I knew we connected. He's going to have, I'm not just some boring shithead that's along for the ride to meet a celebrity.
Yeah.
He's going to have a great time because I'm going to do shtick with him all night. And we did. They leave, and he goes, kid, what are you drinking? And this is not the first martini. This guy's 80 years old. I said, anything you have. And the girls go, yeah, we're going to have the same thing. Goes like that, boom. Fucking gin martinis to the brim. The guy comes, and we all, I don't think they ever drank like this. So they're blitzed already. I'm like semi-thing. And now we're going to go out to dinner. And we go to the garage. He's got this big Cadillac. I picture this guy's like this tall. He's going to have the steering wheel up here, plus drinking. I said, let's take my car. I had a rented Chevy from Hertz, And he gets in the passenger seat. I'm in the driver's seat. The girls are in the back seat. And I just remember, today I would just put a GoPro camera to have the visual of the guy riding shotgun. It's George Burns with a cigar. Says, where are we going, kid? I said, where do you want to go? And he said, well, what about La Dome? And I said, oh, La Dome, I know the place. It was the hot spot on Sunset Boulevard. I said, got to make a reservation. He goes, no, we don't. So, you know where it is. And we go there, and we didn't have a reservation. As soon as they see him, it's like Moses, like this,
He almost has as much power as the mafia. Yeah, don't worry about it, kid. We're in. We got it.
I know that at La Dome, Alan Carr used to own a piece of it. They have select the tables just for that reason, that people can pop in. Now you have a problem if you have 6 celebrities come at the same time.
Yeah.
But otherwise, so it was, I'm there with, he was God. Everybody was calling him God. And then when we got back, he drinks. Like, we were drinking. Here's the thing. Wait, could you put this on? I show you something really cool.
Yeah, go ahead. Come on.
So then we're gonna leave, and he had a box of cigars that were Dunhill Monte Cruz. They're pretty expensive. And he said, and I looking at, he says, "Take a handful, kid," And I said, "I'm not rich, but I can afford. If I wanted Dunhill Monte Cruz, I could buy it. I want one of yours." He smoked El Producto Queens, the kind of cigars you get in a gas station, 25 cents, and that's all he ever smoked. He said, "Why would you want that?" And I said, "Because it's what you smoke." So he takes it, puts it in my pocket. And then I said, "You know what? I'm going to smoke this." Because we were talking about the Sunshine Boys and how in Sunshine Boys they would find out somebody died in Variety.
Yeah.
That's how they know. Where does this happen? Variety. I said, "You're going to probably outlive me. But if you don't, that's when I'm going to smoke this." He reaches into my pocket, takes it, goes like this. The guy comes over, the butler guy, gives him a pen and a piece of paper. They have their code. And he writes something on a note, takes the cigar out, puts it, wraps the note around the cigar, and puts it back in the tube, puts it back in my pocket. And he says, so then I leave. And the girl that I was with, she says, "Aren't you going to read the note and read the note?" So we finally get to the car and have some light. And I read the note.
Yeah, you still got it. Wow.
You read it, and it says,
Let's see.
"To Jeff,
Yep.
don't smoke it.
Okay.
George Burns."
Yeah. Wow.
And so 20 years later, he died at 100. And everybody knew that I had this. I hadn't smoked it, right? He said, "Don't smoke it." And when I told him that I'm going to smoke it when I hear that he died, my brother, so all these people go, "You're going to smoke it now? You smoke it now?" It's like fucking, it's like petrified wood, right? And my brother said to me, what he meant was, if you're smoking it, that means he died. Right? I said, aha. So that's what he meant. Don't smoke it. And he says that, but he said, but he could also meant that he's going to live so long that if you smoke it 20 years later, you're going to die. And I went, bingo, I'm not smoking. I mean, you can see this. It's literally, it's like, I don't even want to open it. But you can imagine what a cheap cigar is.
Oh yeah.
30 years later or 40 years later.
Wow.
Nice momentum.
Yeah, that is a great story. I love it. Double dating with George Burns.
It's probably the most. That was, if I had a highlight reel, that would be on it.
Oh yeah, I can imagine. And next up, I want to talk about a movie I recently saw in the theaters again. There's a friend of mine, which I know he contacted you, Larry Dwyer, because he has something called Connecticut Cult Classics, and he rents movies. I guess he had to get in contact with you to get permission to show it. So he did a double feature with Just Before Dawn and Evil Dead.
Right.
And I happened to see it in the theater, and that's when I was talking to him. I said, "Oh my God, I would love to interview Jeff." And so anyway, I love that movie. Watching it again on the big screen, and with the place was packed, and the crowd was loving it. And you know what's funny? I just found this out recently when I was looking at your Facebook. The Fist, the movie. Whose Fist was that?
Yeah, Susie Essman.
Yeah, how did she get involved in that?
Because, well, she didn't. I mean, I didn't even know. They just needed the mouth was a certain size, so you have to get a woman's fist to fit in the mouth. That's it. You don't have to be an actor or anything. But where are you going to get such a person? So my AD got somebody, and I just said, "Oh, hi," and she wasn't famous or anything. I didn't even remember her name, and so she did it. And how many years later, I got friendly with Susie, totally not connected in the comedy world.
Yep.
She had no idea she ever met me. I had no idea I ever met her until that same uh, assistant director, who's now a producer, Fred Berner, is still a friend of mine. And he told me, he thought I knew. I didn't know. And then I said, she says, that was you with the monster movie? And the fist? I said, yeah. And not only that, but you can tell Larry David that I launched your career. The fisting scene, that was, that's it's
That
just
is
a
funny.
weird thing. Yeah.
Well, this is probably could be the first, if not one of the first, feminist horror movies.
Yeah, well, that's a funny thing that somebody in Alamo Drafthouse in Dallas, he's the first person that he introduced me and the movie as the first feminist horror movie. I never looked at it that way, but it is, it really is. Empowering, all those words that come later. The other thing about it that I have, people think I'm like so touchy about, a slasher.
Hmm.
Oh, guess what? In 1980, that word didn't exist.
Hmm.
You don't go, I'm making a slasher movie. No, you're not. You make, if anything, you say Deliverance. Is that a slasher movie? Right?
Not at all.
So I said, I'm going to do Deliverance, and just without the John Voight character was a guy, a Nebuchadnezzar guy. I'm going to make that a woman.
Hmm.
That's what I did. That's exactly what I did. I say the same character arc, discovering the primal thing because you have to, but instead of making a man, it's a woman.
Hmm.
Right? And then later on, one of the best slashes of the everybody has to put a label on everything in
Yeah,
order to
unfortunately.
market it, in order to talk about it, because people are fucking morons. That's why.
Yeah, unfortunately. But the bottom line is, it's a great movie. Doesn't you don't have doesn't matter what they call it. They just say it's a great movie.
Yes,
So
it
you,
does. It's not a slasher.
it's not a
No,
slasher. It's a feminist horror
I
movie.
don't
Get
really care. I actually, at this point,
it?
I pretend I care. I mean,
Yeah.
it's because they give them some. Don't dare say it's a slash around Jeff Lieberman. Give him something to talk about. Because what am I going to do?
Yeah. Well, it was originally called Last Ritual or the Tennessee Mountain Murders.
Yeah.
And then what was
The
that?
worst. The
Yeah.
worst. The script. It had it had the hand-drawn pictures in it. That's so it didn't look like a screenplay. The sentences went, it just was bad. So I did a complete rewrite, kept the characters' names, and did what I said. Basically it's kids going up in the mountain, but you could do anything with that. And I just figured, wouldn't it be cool to do a flip on Deliverance?
Yeah.
It's really good looking. Deliverance was a beautiful location and they shot it great. John Boorman, great director. And I think that Just Before Dawn, there's certain parts of it that stand up as good as Deliverance as far as what it looks like.
Yeah. Well, that's one of the things I wanted to mention to you because the film is beautifully shot. And I know that you had a problem during filming because of Mount St. Helens. So let's talk about that.
Yeah, well, we were going to shoot up in Oregon, and we had to go up to scout a location to find, the forest. And we get to the airport, and it says the flight is canceled because of a volcano. So I thought, well, if it's April 1st, that would be a volcano. You say even an earthquake, maybe, but a volcano, that's true. And so we had it took a week before we could get up there. And when we got up there, it looked like it was covered with snow.
Yeah.
Snow in Oregon. It had like a thick layer over the cars, but it was this gritty volcanic ash.
Well, it's funny because as I mentioned, I live in Connecticut. I remember seeing ash in the air in Connecticut. That's how far it came.
Really?
Yeah, I remember that. I don't know how it got that far, but I remember my mother telling my brothers and I, "Oh yeah, that's from Mount St. Helens." I mean, maybe it wasn't. Maybe she was incorrect, but I know it's a big thing. It's funny because the studio pre-sold the movie claiming that they had George Kennedy and Linda Blair. So George Kennedy ended up being in the movie. What happened with Linda Blair?
I don't think that when they said they had George Kennedy and Linda Blair, I don't think they had George Kennedy. I
Also,
think they lied that was a common practice back then to raise money in foreign, and then they would do a swap. Once they got money, they get somebody. They're going to get somebody. I'm pretty sure that Linda Blair never heard anything about it one way or the other.
no. And so what about George Kennedy?
I never asked him about it, but I wouldn't be surprised if he didn't know about it
No.
when raising the money.
Right. Well, you did get Chris Lemmon, who was Jack Lemmon's son. He was
Yeah,
great
well,
in the movie.
that's easy.
Yeah.
That's just casting.
Yeah, no, he did. He was a great job. So there's a couple stories I want to talk about in this movie because they were hilarious. One was the nude scene. The actress said she wouldn't mind doing it as long as nobody was watching. You told the park ranger to keep everybody out. What could possibly go wrong when you tell somebody? Like they say, if you tell three people something, the secret will be kept only if two people are dead.
The park ranger told everybody in his church,
Oh.
they're going to be shooting a nudie scene, and he's saying, so I got to keep people away, right? Well, then I get her out there, and I look up, and it was, because public is a national forest, so here's the lake, and it's big, kind of side of a mountain up, and then you can where the people walk all around the waterfall, right?
Mhm.
And it's lined with people with binoculars and cameras, and I had to keep Jamie Rose, the actress, from looking up because she looks up, she's gonna freak out. So I kept saying, "Oh, look at them! Don't trip on the rocks." I try to keep her focused to keep looking down because she looks up. We're not shooting the scene.
As you're saying, look at the fish, look at the fish. So with that movie, did that do well with the right away, or was that another one that caught on later on?
Because in that, everything has a story where this was a luck factor. You do a movie, and then the Universal wanted to pick it up, and that would have been huge. And then the guy from Universal, who was the head of sales or acquisitions, found out who the producer was, and he said, "Life's too short. That guy I'm never gonna work with him." So it was just the association with the guy who produced the movie that they killed it.
Uh,
And then it just went independent. So if it wasn't for the Blu-rays and first VHS and then TV and all, they find an audience later on because the next generation just idolizes those original
mhm.
golden age, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah. Well, like I said several weeks ago, I was able to see it firsthand in the sold-out theater. The audience was loving every second of it, clapping, cheering, it was great.
Well, if you saw the movie, then you saw Deborah pull her fist out of the guy's throat.
Yes.
Okay, you ready?
Let's hear it.
Right. That was me.
You still got it. See, who needs money for all these sound effects?
That's right.
That sounds good. All right, I want to go to your documentaries now because I saw two of them, and I thought they were great. I saw But Seriously and Sonny Liston, The Mysterious Life and Death of a Champion. The only one I haven't seen yet is The Museum, but I do want to find that one and see it because it sounds interesting.
Did you see which? But seriously, I did two of them. Did you see the long one?
The longer one.
Yeah, good.
Yeah.
That was the original one. It was like an hour and a half.
That's the one I saw. It was on YouTube, and
Yeah.
and it had the limit. But I want to talk about Museum first, even though I haven't seen it, because how did you get Sidney Poitier to narrate, and what's the whole documentary about?
No, you're confused.
Oh,
He had nothing to do with
okay. So
Museum. Sidney Poitier was the narrator of a film that I didn't make. It was on Paul Robeson.
I'm sorry about that. Yeah, I did. I'm reading my
I
notes.
just did a favor and went along so I could direct Sidney in the narration. but it wasn't, I didn't write the narration, and it was Saul Terrell's movie, but I'm the one that got Sydney. And Saul wanted me to come with him to LA to do the recording of Sydney because he saw how I handled Rod Serling. And
Okay.
that's when that happened.
Yeah, that's my mistake. I read my notes incorrectly, and I do remember that now after you mentioned that. But there is funny because, like as you mentioned, the mob and other people love you because you're a street guy and you say it like it is. You won over Sydney too. How'd you bond over petrol?
Yeah. Well, we didn't really bond over it, but he's like, he was standing there pontificating. I mean, he's Sidney Poitier, you got to listen to the guy. And he's got this mansion with a Citizen Kane fireplace, the walk-in fireplace, in Beverly Hills, and servants all over the place. And he says, he wanted us to make, he says, do you know that now that the advent of videotape, they're showing these video cassettes in the third world, throughout Africa, and the tribes get together, and you know what they're watching? And even though I'm street, I figured don't say it because I was going to say Amos and Andy. But I go,
Love Amos and Andy.
don't go there, even though it would have been funny because I was close. It was I Love Lucy.
Yep.
Same thing, right? Only one, they go, they read some racial shit into it.
Yep.
So he says, I Love Lucy. So he says they should be learning how to, agriculture film. So he's basically asking us if we would make agriculture, how to plant corn and shit like that, right? And he says, in the world, and I'm thinking, I look at Saul, and Saul is going, yeah, we'll do, anything to get his narration. He's not saying, are you nuts? We're not going to do that. But I'm thinking there's no chance that I'm doing that. None.
Yeah.
So then he says, do you realize that we're running out, that the third world nations and India and especially China, he said, we have two cars in every garage and 3 kids. And if they would burn petrol, he kept saying petrol. It's annoying to me. He said, if they burn petrol at the rate we do, China, right? And they have 1 billion people, that the world will run out of petrol in like 10 years. And I just had it. I said, Sydney, if everybody in this country burned petrol the way you do, we're going to run out of petrol in about a week.
I love it.
Because he's got this huge mansion, and he looks at me, and Saul turned white because he thought I just blew the whole thing. But Sydney was from New York too. And he starts cracking up and says, yeah, I sound like I could tell I must sound like a real hot air ass. So he goes, let's go do this. We got along great.
Well, my next question definitely has something to pertain with the museum, this documentary. How did you survive the King Tut's curse?
I don't know. I'm still here, but yeah, I went when we were shooting the Tutankhamun thing. They have that gold. Is that a statue of it? I mean, that's where I guess they got that from the tomb, right? The famous.
Yeah.
And it's there in the case, and we broke for lunch. It was the middle of the night at the Sackler Museum in the Metropolitan Museum. It was dark, but the thing was lit up, and it was just me and Tut. The rest of the crew went to eat. And I'm standing there, and I looked him right in the eye, because it was calibrated to be on a pedestal that was pretty much my height, the average height. And I looked him in the eye, and I said, fuck you, Tut. Right? And your curse, and your bullshit, and Yul Brynner. I threw in Yul Brynner. And anybody else that whipped a Hebrew slave, go fuck yourself. Right? So that's what I did. And the next day, I'm there in the editing room, and I get a phone call. This guy Bob Schmidt, who handled all the film stuff, he says, the footage came in and we got a problem. What problem? He says, well, one of the reels, we're shooting 16 millimeters, so that 400-foot loads, I think. which is like 10 minutes, I guess. And one of them, he says, has a deep negative scratch through a whole setup, like section. And I went, the close up of the tuck thing, says, how did you know? When I thought that, and a negative scratch back, you do that today, optically, you can fill in anything. But back then, there's nothing you can do but reshoot. And we couldn't do that because the Egyptian government didn't even want us to do it in the first place. You can't go back to it. And I remember thinking, I don't believe in this shit, but if I did believe in it, I just dodged a bullet, because a negative scratch I can live with, but being dead, nah, it's a little different, you know? I mean, that's what happened.
That's funny.
Everybody else that opened that tomb is dead. Every one of them. Not because a long time ago, but something happened to each one of them.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad you survived the curse, and that was it. It was only a negative scratch.
Yeah.
Well, next up is the documentary. I didn't realize there was two versions of it. I did see the 1.5 hour version. It was But Seriously.
Oh no, there's not two versions.
Did they cut it though?
We did it, and they loved it so much. Showtime, they asked us, "We do another one?"
Oh, okay.
And I said, "How can we do another one? Wait 30. Now I could do it." But I said, "There's 94. You want to do 95 or 93 was the first one?"
Yep.
And I said, how can we do another one next year? And then they said, how about if you do a year-end show? Why? Because we went to the clubs and shot all. I'll send it to you. I'll send you a link. You can find that, I think, on YouTube, the other one.
Okay.
It has Andrew Dice Clay, as David Brenner. It has Joy Burt.
They are.
Yeah. They are, yeah.
All right. Yeah. Well, what was the reason you chose the 60s? To start in the 60s?
Well, we started in 1960. Is the idea is because we couldn't get, first of all, there weren't any comics that were doing political comedy before Mort Saul and Lenny Bruce. Weren't. And the other thing is you wouldn't get any footage on.
Yeah.
So they weren't doing it on television, so where we get it. So really that political comedy really started in 1960 with Carlin, with Lenny, and with Mort Saul.
Yeah.
So that was a starting point from 1960 to 1993, where we made it in 93, so you couldn't go beyond that.
Yeah. I have to say, growing up, I was listening to my father's records, like Class Clown, and all. George Carlin was always my favorite. Then as I got older, my father would take my brothers and I to see him live. And then as I got even older, I would just go on my own. I saw him every year, probably from early, like 83, 84, all the way up until 2008. And I missed the last one because I said, you know what, it's on HBO. Tickets are so expensive. I'll see him next tour. And he ended up dying. So I saw him so many. He is definitely my all-time favorite comedian. He
started off at the beginning of his career. He was doing cornball, hippy dippy weather. I mean, it's so funny how Lenny Bruce did the same thing. There's no footage of it, but Lenny Bruce was a bad nightclub, like grade Z nightclub guy, until he started to do like personal stuff. So then the other guys say, gee, I could do that too. Well, everybody thinks they could do it, and then Richard Pryor. If you look at the earliest Richard Pryor stuff, he was
like Bill Cosby
stand up until he evolved into just fucking be Richard Pryor. And so all those guys, so that's what you see in the show I did. You could see that progression. You know? And no, if so far, because I'm going to do something else, but so far, the thing I'm the most proud of is But Seriously, the first one. Why? Because I had an idea, and I don't care what your idea is. It's one thing to have an idea. It's another thing to execute all the shit that you have to do and maintain that idea at the end. You know how many things get lost in the translation, get watered down, people's opinions, you know. Every time I see something, I wonder if this could have been good if everybody didn't, you know. It's a good idea and you get disappointed. Well, it's one thing to have a good idea, but to execute it and keep that idea is really fucking hard. That one by far and away came the closest to what I was trying to do.
Mm-hmm.
The next closest would be Satan's Little Helper.
I love that movie.
And the reason with Satan's Little Helper is I had no, see, the other one I had to deal with Rob Reiner, which is a big deal.
Mm-hmm.
But seriously, in other words, I had bosses.
Yeah.
In the case of Satan's Little Helper, that's all me, right? So I like complete freedom to do the film I wanted to make for the little money I had. That was the trade.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about that. How did you get Rob Reiner?
I didn't get Rob Reiner. Richard Crystal, Billy's brother, he was in Blue Sunshine. Richard.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we were friends all the way through, and always said we're going to do something together, and the option to book once, and then, so he knew Rob because of his brother Billy.
Mm-hmm.
I pitched it to him, he pitched it to Rob. Next thing I know, I'm in Rob's office.
Yeah.
Rob got us the money in 2 seconds. He could have gotten HBO or Showtime. We picked Showtime.
Yeah, no, it's great. And there's a very touching story in the book where you made Richard Pryor both laugh and cry at the same time.
He came. We had a premiere before it was on the air at the Directors Guild in LA, and everybody who was anybody in comedy, not just the people in the documentary, but just in general, they showed up. I mean, Bette Midler's not in it, and Jerry Seinfeld was there with his girlfriend, and that was because it was Castle Rock, they could just put the word out, and everybody showed up, filled up, 500 people, and somebody tells me Richard Pryor's there. I knew this is after he burned himself, and then they said he has what disease did he have?
MS.
MS, and bad, but probably didn't help that he almost burned himself to death. You know, it's like really his whole body was burned.
Yeah.
And so where is he? So they said, you and your wife could go back. He's in a separate room. And I go see him. I go, I have a picture of me, and it's on my Facebook thing.
It's also in the book too. You have a picture. Yeah.
And I said, how you doing, man? He says, I got my good days, my bad days. I said, what's today? He says, bad day. Just the fact that he showed up was kind of an honor.
Yeah.
And because he was in a wheelchair, he was sitting right next to me in the aisle. I was on the end, right? And so I turned around and I see him sitting there. So when he sings "Nobody Wants You When You're Down and Out" in the show, I turn around and he's crying. He hadn't seen that in like forever, and seen it in the context that I cut it with the, with the poverty and everything.
Yeah.
I said, Rich, I said, is it that bad? And he laughed.
Yeah.
So he went from crying to laugh, and I went, okay, Jesus, you could take me now. It was one of those, I ain't gonna do better than that.
Well, you might have done just a little bit better, because later on, Lily Tomlin showed you how much she appreciated what you did for her.
Yeah, I know. So I said to Lily Tomlin came over and said how much, because she's in it, she was great. And she said, you did such a great job. I said, listen, Lily, I have two of my comedy god, Richard Pryor, and my comedy goddess, you, here at the same time. And she grabs my face. I figured, oh, she'd give me a kiss like my grandmother. She grabs my face and she sticks her fucking tongue down like it was so Lily Tomlin, I was like, whoa. And I said to my wife, I said, I'm never gargling again. So then years later with the Me Too stuff, what's the statute of limitations? I can go, she's a star. I didn't ask her to do that. She stuck her tongue. And then I'm thinking, yeah, but everybody heard me saying I'm never going to gargle again. And that's not going to hold up in court. You didn't say that if you were so hurt.
That is funny. Well, I'm so glad that all these legends appreciated what you did for them. Did you happen to meet George Carlin after you did the movie?
No, I actually, yes. And I don't know. I was with Tony Hendra, who was very close with him, and we went backstage. I don't remember if I talked to him about it or not.
Uh,
That's the only time I ever met George.
yeah. Well, I want to move on because I just saw this documentary very recently. It's the Sonny Liston, The Mysterious Life and Death of a Champion. That was so interesting. I have so many questions about that. One I want to talk about is the fixing of the fights with the mob. Because,
Yeah,
well,
well, I don't think you see the first fight. It's cloudy because they stopped it. He really legitimately had a torn thing, and remember, I don't know if you remember, but that Ali had a hernia.
hmm
It delayed the fight, and
yeah.
also that Sonny was probably 38 years old at that point. You know, he was so far past in his prime. Nobody could have beat him, and nobody did. He knocked that. He not only beat everybody, he knocked everybody out in the heavyweight division. It was only one belt. Now they got four belts. There's one belt. The heavyweight champion of the world. He knocked every one of them out. Destroyed the top guy, Floyd Patterson. Knocked him out in one round. Knocked him out in one round.
Mhm.
Right? So I can't say that the first fight was fixed, or I don't know enough about, but the second fight definitely was not fixed like you're going to take a dive, make money, but he knew the the Muslims literally recruited. They were waiting for somebody that could suck into their bullshit. The black Muslim, you know,
Mhm.
uh, Elijah Muhammad with all that crap. They were waiting to get a celebrity to put them on the map and get power, and he was it. Cassius Clay. That's your slave name. Well, how come his father says that was no fucking slave name? They made all this shit up. And he
Yep.
bought, as cool as that guy was and quick witted, he was very naive,
hmm
extremely naive. I think Sonny Liston was a lot smarter than Ali.
Yeah.
Sonny Liston, you know, people think, well, you're illiterate. That doesn't mean you're stupid. You can have a high IQ and be illiterate.
hmm
Every time Sonny said something, it was so right on the money. One time, a sports writer says to him, Sonny, it said you're a man of few words. You know what he says? Yep, and I done said them all. Ended the conversation. Isn't that like, I
Yeah.
don't care how you phrase it, that's like a smart guy to come up with that shit.
Yeah.
And
He just didn't have that outgoing, gregarious personality like Muhammad
just look
Ali
at
was.
his father. He was one of 26 kids, beat the shit out of his father. He had on his back, he had all the welts from being whipped and beat.
Wow. Wow.
And so for him to go, I mean, the guy was, I really admired him, you know. And but the second fight, I mean, they basically got to him and said, "You're going to go down, and if you don't," and they had seen Malcolm X.
hmm
Malcolm X, who I thought was like the most incredible guy. He went from like buying into that shit to be. He was very smart, and he was a street guy, and then figured he figured out these guys are in it for themselves. This is not helping the black. And don't blame Whitey for everything. That all came from Malcolm
hmm
uh, to start being responsible for our own families and all that. Every single thing he said, I went, "This is the guy, not Martin Luther King. It's Malcolm X." So what do? They kill him,
hmm
and then Farrakhan comes in with the same bullshit.
Yeah.
Sonny Liston was a guy who has been in prison. He knows these guys are dealing, they're not kidding. So between the mob bending against him and the biggest thing, it was he was afraid of the Muslims because they said, "You're not leaving the stadium." He's saying, "If I beat this guy, they're going to kill me right in the ring." They did it right on Columbus Circle. That's when Malcolm got shot in front of
Yeah.
him. So that's a dive. you don't get knocked down by Cleveland Williams, one of the hardest punchers ever, broke Sonny's jaw. He had to have it wired after the fight. You know what happened? Sonny got pissed off because he broke his jaw. He went in the middle of the ring and knocked out Cleveland Williams with one punch. They had to take him out. Right?
Yeah.
That's the same guy that's getting knocked out by a flick that you can't even see.
Mm-hmm.
What he did was he took a bad version of a dive. He just figured, I'm out of here. So the first time he's going to hit me, I'm going down. And now that I said it, go watch that fight.
Yep.
Look for a place to put his hand out to fall, like you would if you tripped over a pebble.
Yeah.
So that was a fix.
It makes me wonder if Muhammad Ali would have been a champion as long or even at all if all of this wasn't going on.
Well, I can tell you the one thing, I don't have such high regard with Ali. Everybody says the greatest. No, I think they don't know boxing, and they cloud it in with all the social, the political stuff and everything else. Because when it comes down to being a fighter, once he became a major, bigger than life celebrity, if you know boxing and you don't know anybody's name and you see him fight, he got away with murder. He would hold guys behind the head.
Mm-hmm.
Just not only illegal, but you can kill somebody that way because the head can't go back. And the referees, everybody looked the other way. If they really scored him legitimately, outside of, I think he lost 3 times to Ken Norton, and a lot of boxing people do, his record wouldn't look anywhere near as good, and he would have been disqualified because you do that twice. They take points away, you do it twice, you're disqualified. He did it after, like Joe Frazier. From there on, he was doing that every fight. Grab the cupping, it's called. It's really dangerous. And he pushed the guy's head down, hit him. So I'm not a big.
The next, let's go right to remote control then, because I saw that again the other night, just getting ready for this interview, and that's another movie that, for me, it was very nostalgic. I love the video period, and I love going to the old video stores and just picking movies out. So I want to talk about how your love of 50s sci-fi and the phrase "video invasion" inspired that movie.
Yeah, well, that's basically what it was. Is that I made it in 1987, was the height of the video invasion, and I thought of the word invasion, and I'm thinking invasion from outer space. That's when you hear invasion,
Yeah.
And these items, there was never such an item, a film, a plastic thing. You couldn't get a movie into your house. People today, you have to be old enough to remember that before video cassettes, the only way you could see movies in your house was when they showed them on TV with commercials and all of that. So to have the actual movie was such a incredible novelty. And you're going to a place that didn't exist before called a video store. It would not, why would you have it? And picking out a movie and bringing it home to play. And you're trusting that this thing is just a movie. I was thinking invasion. Well, what if it's a way to get a bomb into somebody's house or something? It's naively, like what the Israelis just did they could have done the same thing with cassettes and blow up your house, right?
Yeah.
And so that's what inspired me to write it.
Yeah. And how'd you get Kevin Dillon?
Oh, I had seen him in Platoon. That was pretty easy. I just we had money. It was like $3 million or something, and he was no big star, and I just said, get him. Got him.
But he had a friend named Johnny, and he wanted you to meet him. Who was that?
Yeah, he had a friend, Johnny, that was in Platoon with him, came in to read for the part of Georgie, which was the other guy in the video store. A big role, like a co-star.
Yeah.
He was just boring as shit. And I passed, and it was Johnny Depp.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Oh. Add that to the list of Kim Basinger, Martin Sheen, Sylvester Stallone. Another one you had in there, I thought she was great in this movie too, was Jennifer Tilly, the sister of Meg. Because you mentioned, and it was so true, I remember that, like having the name on the box of the VHS, and maybe it might not be the
You know
main star, it could
why?
be the sibling.
You know the reason? Because if you went into a video store,
Yep.
you didn't know the movie. What I overheard people, anytime you went into a mom and pop or any video store, somebody would hold up and go, "Did you see this?" And somebody would say, um, or somebody would recommend a movie, right? They'd say, you know, remote control. Who's in it? That's the first thing they ask about any movie.
Yep.
And if you say Murray Smedlap, never heard of him. And they right, but if you say Clint Eastwood, oh really? I got to see that one. It doesn't matter. It's all name driven. So if you can't get, they called it the name on the box. That was the expression. Then you get the brother of the famous person that's also an actor. And there was a whole, that's how they all got careers.
Yeah.
Bill Murray's, Brian Doyle, you know, it was like, and so Meg Tilly was a star. Jennifer was her sister.
Mm-hmm.
She didn't have a name or anything. Same thing with Kevin, because his brother. And then, ironically, it's flipped because Kevin got
Entourage.
Entourage. And you know what? Last October, he was at Chiller.
Yeah, I met him. He did a great bumper for me. I want to put that at the beginning of our interview.
You went to Chiller?
Yeah, I go to Chiller every April and every October.
Okay. I went there to see a couple of other people. I saw that Kevin was there. I hadn't seen him since 1987.
Wow.
Since we did 1988, say.
Yeah.
And or talk to him. I go there and there's a line, you know, signing autographs. And I never watched Entourage. He says, I don't watch stuff like that. But I go around and I go right up to him. And his person there was ready to like say, let's get online. But I go over to say, I said, you know, you're a mook. And he turns around and he looks at me and he goes, hey, how you doing? Just the way I'm saying is like, hey, how you doing? So what are you working on? I knew he had no idea who I was.
Yeah.
No, but he was doing that Hollywood, you know,
Yeah.
you know, like faking it until the guys, and then they go, oh yeah, we gotta do lunch. And I look at him and I go, no, at first I said something else. And then I said, you know, you're a fucking mook. He goes, Jeff? And he goes nuts. And he's hugging me, and everybody's like, who the hell is this guy? Well, I have a great picture of, you know, we could do it interactive.
Oh yeah, definitely. It's like I'll find my picture and I'll send it to you. He was great.
And then we, you know, we had dinner that night, and it was good.
Yeah.
So
What day did you go? Did you go Saturday or Sunday? Do you remember? I was there. I usually go Sundays because Saturdays are so packed.
I think it was Saturday.
Oh, okay.
It was packed. But anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah, Kevin is so great. He's a good guy. I mean, he's what you see is what you get with him. He's really.
He seemed like it because he took the picture with me, and I wanted him to do a bumper for the show, and he goes, "Give me your phone," and he did a great one for me.
Can you see this?
Oh yeah, I love it. I have my phone upstairs, so I'll send you my picture after in the video. But well, actually, that's a great segue. What I want to go into next, the conventions. Not only do you go to conventions, but you're also a part of a lot of these conventions. How did that all start?
Just Mike Gingold, you know him?
See, I've heard the name before. Maybe with your book,
Fangoria?
Fangoria.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I know Tony Timpone. Is that
Tony Timpone? At the time, Chris Alexander, I think. Mike just is on staff.
Okay.
And he called me. I was living in Beverly Hills. I was doing all this like never-ending story, like mainstream shit.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing to do with horror. And he called me and he said, you know, I want to do a story on you and your film. I said, why? What? I thought it was a prank call, and it turned out that I have a whole new fan. I didn't have any fan base, and then all of a sudden, I find out that the next generation, I'm one of these guys that they grew up on my movie, and guys like Del Toro and Eli Roth and all those guys that came along. And so I went to one of these conventions, and I have like an entourage behind me everywhere I went, and then they started inviting me to them, and it's like just came out of the blue.
Yeah. Well, there's a great story in the book where your daughter wanted to meet the Misfits.
Yeah, that was the first one. And Fangoria actually had their own convention
Yeah.
hotel, and
Wait, was that around what year was that? Because I went to 1990 and it had Sam Raimi, Bruce Campbell, Gunnar Hansen, Roddy McDowell.
it was later.
Okay.
And she said, I never heard of the Misfits, but she wanted to.
Yeah.
So you think you can go up there? We had the digital camera, and I said, yeah, I'll go over. And I said, hey, you mind taking a picture with my daughter? So they go, oh, no, bring her over here. So we, take a picture of her with the Misfits. And then they said, so what are you doing? They talking to her and said, so what are you doing here? You're so young, like 10 or something. She says, well, my dad is here. They want him to say something on the stage or something. And they go, oh yeah, who's your dad? And she says, Jeff Lieberman. He goes, that's your dad? It's Jeff Lieberman. So then they said, hey, after the picture, could you get a picture with us, with you, with me?
I love it.
And she goes, she had no fucking idea because she wasn't born.
Yeah.
So she did go on remote control. She was a kid, like carrying on my shoulders. She was probably 1.5 or 2 or something. But other than that, all she knew was, Never Ending Story, But Seriously, all those things that I did later, that's all she knew.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
I wouldn't let her see the other movies, so
Yeah.
pretty cool.
So what conventions have you done? I know Fangoria, and have you ever done Chiller or Rock and Shock?
I did Chiller 3 times, I think.
Oh, so I'm trying to think. Lately I've been going to Chiller every year. There's a couple of years I missed, so I wonder if that was the year because I don't remember meeting you, and I definitely would remember that.
No, I mean I did Chiller when I did Satan's Little Helper. That was 2004.
Yeah, I definitely started going later on, maybe like 2011, 2012.
Did it 3 times. I don't know the years. And then I did Cinema Wasteland, and I did that 4 times.
Yeah.
And one in Niagara Falls. I just did 3 this year. One in Tampa, one in Toronto.
Yeah.
Stock. It's called. Jersey.
Yeah. Are you going to be going back? Are you going to be going back to Chiller?
Nah.
No.
It's not really. It's like Fonzie. It's
Yeah.
like.
Well,
It started out with Chiller Theater and
Yeah.
Zachary, and then it just became like an autograph show of anybody who's famous enough to get their autograph. Stallone did it. I mean, it's like anybody who wants to. They make big money, especially the cash, but it's got nothing to do with the genre anymore.
Oh yeah, no, I completely agree. It's more pop culture. Like as you mentioned, I actually did meet Henry Winkler there. I
Yeah.
did meet the cast of WKRP there. So yeah, it's definitely not when I first started going.
And the cast of The Sopranos.
Yeah.
What does it have to do with nothing?
Yeah. No, well, between Remote Control and Satan's Little Helper, there's a big lull. Not that you were not working, but with people who only watched the horror movies, and there was a rumor going around that you were dead.
Yeah. I'm not so sure they were wrong, but assuming they were wrong. No, one guy actually said that I died of cancer. He was very specific when I died of cancer.
Wow.
And because they just figured the only explanation for not doing more movies like Carpenter, all these guys kept doing it, is that I'm dead. It didn't occur to them that there's other things.
Yeah. But what prompted you actually, let's get into this. How did a gorillagram inspire you to come up with Satan's Little Helper?
Yeah, well, I had a 50th birthday party, and I figured, well, my birthday is October 16th, so why not? You know, I just got a house at that time in Irvington, big house uh, in Westchester. And I said, we're making a Halloween party. It's close enough. You know, all my friends went out. I said, you got it. You're not getting in unless you have a costume. That was the deal.
Mm-hmm.
And so I invited a lot of people, and they all showed up in costume. It was great. And then I thought everybody was there. And then this gorilla comes, like an hour later, and he just walked into the house because nobody was checking the front door anymore. And he's full gorilla, like all out thing. And I'm thinking, and he's feeling up the girl, you know, he's acting like an asshole, like a guy in a gorilla suit.
Yeah.
I'm thinking for sure I know who it is because I have a friend that would do just that. And then he starts dancing with me and putting on music, and I'm thinking this guy could be anybody, and he could be a robber, and you know, and so. And then I said, well, it's got to be no. First, I thought I knew who it was. Then I look over, and the guy I thought who it was is sitting with his wife in a costume. So who is this? Right? The guy I thought was in the gorilla suit.
Yeah.
It's not in the gorilla suit. So who the hell is this? So I'm like freaking out. We got a stranger here, and he could be anybody robbing us. And I'm trying to get my wife's attention to call 911, but part of my brain was in the safety mode of get the police just in case, and the other part of my brain was there's a movie here. There's something in somebody coming in a costume that they could easily come in because everybody else in the costume, only they're not invited, they're a psychopath. And I remember I filed it into my brain, and that's it. I didn't say go write a movie. I didn't have a movie until later, 3-4 years later. I had this notion of, I wrote down Santa's Little Helper.
Mm-hmm.
And what is Santa's Little Helper? The elves and shit. And people, kids would write Dear Santa. Oh, that's what it was. They write Dear Santa letters and send it to the North Pole. And every post office in the United States gets tons of these letters to Santa every year, right? Parents drop it off and they write, Dear Santa, I would like my sister to have, you know, they write these letters to Santa Claus.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm thinking, what if it was Satan's, not Satan's Little Helper, but what if you're writing a letter to Satan because some bully and you want him killed?
Yep.
You know, something like that. Well, how would you do it? You write the letter, and I pictured this kid writing the letter, and then the address is 666 Hell Street, Hell. Right? Satan. He's writing to Satan. How does he deliver it? He doesn't go to the post office. He flushes it down the toilet. I was picturing the note going down, 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 and that would start a story of a kid connecting with Satan. Somehow, and this is the thing that I can do because I've done it enough, those two, the costume party with not knowing who was there and the Satan thing melded.
Mm-hmm.
And then once I got, yep, that's a movie, and then I could write it. But you know, you can't sit down and say, let's see, I gotta come up with an idea for a movie. It doesn't work that way.
Yeah.
It's organic.
I guess it's similar to like when I was doing comedy. Same thing. I couldn't just sit there and like, all right, I'm going to write a lot of material right now. It would just come to me and sort of like you, like, all right, let me put that to the side. I'll work on it and develop it. So it's the same thing with a script. And probably musicians say the same thing too. It's like, didn't not sit there and write a song. It's like there could be like 3 a.m. Hey, I have an idea, and they'll write it down really quickly before they forget.
Absolutely. Right.
But during production, you had to change the name to Little Helper. Why was that?
Yeah, because the people in the neighborhood, Satan, it's unbelievable in a semi-sophisticated area.
Yeah.
Nothing to do with Satan, you know.
Yeah, I was surprised because you said I guess the area was north of New York City, and it was not the south. So I'm surprised that area was they were so
White
uptight.
Plains. It's White Plains. It was,
Wow.
yeah, shocking.
And did they ever find out?
Oh yeah, the people that owned the house were furious when they found that the movie. We rented the whole house, and then to find out it's Satan, they didn't know either.
Well, you know what? Let me say it right now, right here on film. If you ever have an idea for a movie, my place is Mi Casa Su Casa. So you can film anywhere you want here. I don't care what it's called, what it's about.
You're wrong. Listen, that I wouldn't let people shoot in my house.
Yeah.
No matter what they say, they're going to screw up something, scratch the floor.
Yeah.
It's just too much of a risk. Unless you're getting really stupid money, I wouldn't recommend it.
Yeah. Well, no, I would. I was making a joke saying I wouldn't be so uptight about the title. Like I could care less
Oh,
what
the
it's about. That's
title.
what I meant by that. Yeah.
Oh, oh,
You can name it. The Devil's Children. I could care
oh,
less.
yeah, sure, of course.
Well, I'm having so much fun talking to you. I just want to go over a couple more things because, as I mentioned before, you've had so many great experiences, and I love the fact that you seems like you make the most out of every moment. Like when you meet George Burns, like I don't want to just be a fan. I want to go on a double date. There's two stories I want to talk about before we go. One, which she's actually going to be at Chiller this year, and I never had a chance to meet her. Hopefully, I do. Is Mariel Hemingway. She was at a convention with you, and you end up going hiking with her.
Yeah, so she didn't like doing them. I'm surprised she's still doing it. But I met her there, and I just asked her, what do you have to do now? You don't even have to ask that. But I said, you're in a Woody Allen movie and you did this and that. What horror or sci-fi thing have you done? And she said, Superman 4. I said, there was no Superman 4. And she says, I wish you were right. It's an awful movie. And then we
Oh,
wound up kind of bonding, and we went hiking nearby because it was in New Jersey, and she wanted to go out. She's big exercise something. So we wound up going to this mountain nearby, and the two of us. And I was kind of insulted by her because I said, Mario, we just met yesterday. This is a horror convention, you know. You don't know my movies, you don't know me. We're all alone here. What if I'm like a crazy, guy, like you're taking this big leap of faith to be up here with me? I could just like, attack you. She turns around and gives me a look like, yeah, sure. I was insulted. I had no credibility of being like a bad guy. She didn't answer. She just went. I call that racial profiling in a way.
I agree. I'd be insulted too.
Yeah. I mean, she happened to be right, but how do you know? Like, what's the tell? Like, what about me? A guy, Jeffrey Dahmer, who's so nice, right?
Yeah.
I could be the night. No, she saw through that I actually am nice. Like it's just like shit. It took me a long time to get over that.
I
I'm
don't
still
blame you.
not over it.
I'd be insulted too.
Yeah.
The other one I want to talk about is when you were the El Presidente of the Fantastic Film Festival, which I see that shirt right there. You met Tippi Hedren.
Not here.
Okay, not that one, but the Fantastic.
That was in Malaga, Spain.
Yes.
I do a lot of those, like I'm doing in Manchester. I do way more film festivals now, way more than the show. I don't like those shows anymore. It's just you've been to one, they're all the same. So I like to go to different countries and Brussels, and that one was in Malaga, Spain, and we had a ball, Tippi. My wife and I, we bonded with her and kept the friendship going, afterwards, and it's great.
You had the greatest opening line. What was that?
What?
The early bird gets the worm.
Yeah. I said the bird and the worm. She didn't know what I was talking about because she didn't know Squirm. Then she figured it out afterwards. Yeah.
But But as I mentioned, you make the most of every moment, and you end up back at the house with her, and
Yeah, in California, she has this animal preserve with lions and tigers, and we were, yeah. I I actually have really cool video that we shot with our phone that I never. I don't know if she wants. She took me on a tour, and she's telling, she has a separate building there with all her memorabilia from her career with Alfred Hitchcock and all that stuff. And but I never showed it to anybody. I figured, you know, if if she doesn't outlive me, I'll. It's the same as the George Burns thing. I'll do it as a memorial thing.
yeah,
But it was amazing with Edith Head. I mean, she has, Hollywood. You're talking to old Hollywood, you know.
hmm yeah.
Great
Well,
lady.
well, it's funny because while you were there, you ended up inviting over 50 fans to party with you at your house. How many took you up on that offer?
Oh yeah, well, uh, none of them took me up on it, but the idea that we invited so many young people to say you come to New York, we're empty nesters, and I had all these cards of we invited so many of them, and then I realized on the plane, it's like this is a horror convention. We're in Europe, in Spain. What if they're a bunch of wackos? I don't know anything more about them than, oh, we like your movies. And I went, it's an idea for a movie. And that's when I wrote Sin Muerte that never got made, but came very close a lot of times.
Hmm.
It's a
Well,
shame.
well, Jeff, I had the best time talking to you. Thank you very much for doing the show. And I'm definitely looking forward to whatever's going to be coming up. And I highly recommend to all my viewers right now, where can they buy your movies? Where can they buy your book? Not in Amazon, but
In New York, the number is, it's jeffliebermandirector.com, all one word, jeffliebermandirector.com, all lowercase. Yeah, probably jeffliebermandirector.com. That's jeffliebermandirector.com. What was that again? Do you
Jeff,
remember they used to do this? And you
oh
go,
yes, I
there's no
definitely
way
do.
they're going to say it another time, and they would say it. And
Well, what we're
you
going
can
to do
get the
is,
book. You can get the book, and you can get remote control uh, on Blu-ray.
all right.
That site, and the only reason to do it instead of Amazon, well, it's free shipping. That's one reason, and the other reason is I sign it, personalize it. Otherwise, I don't have any contact with it.
Yep.
So,
Well, I think I'm going to be
what was that address again?
JeffLiebermanDirector.com.
There you go.
I got it. And you know what? You're going to be getting. I'm going to be looking that up after that because I want some signed movies from you.
Okay. There you go.
All right. So before we go, what's next, and where can people find you? Besides, I know JeffLiebermanDirector.com, but I mean, would you recommend either? Do you have a Facebook page? You have Instagram?
I have Facebook 2 pages, but they're both me. One's a fan page,
Okay.
and one's a me page where they restrict it to 5,000.
Yeah.
So what I do is I just knock people off that because I don't know at 5,000 people, I'm not exaggerating.
Yeah.
I might know 30 or 40 of them personally.
Yeah.
So it's kind of arbitrary. It's not like don't take it personally. I knock the name off just the way I accepted it. I don't know them.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
So
I do the same thing when I was in comedy. I accepted everybody's friendship verb so I can promote myself and let people know where I am. But now that I'm not really doing it anymore, I get new friends, knock the old ones off that have no idea who they are. So I do the same
only
thing.
knock them off because you can't go over the 5,000.
Yeah.
That's
Yep.
why I do. So I figured, okay, knock this one off and just rotate them. But anyway, those are the two, Facebook. And my daughter set it up on, I'm on Instagram. I never do anything on those things. I'm on there
Mm-hmm.
on Twitter or X and Instagram, but I've never put,
Yeah.
I have very rarely, but not for a long, long time. And one of them, which is the one that's owned by Facebook, Instagram.
Yeah.
A lot
Instagram.
of times you post something, it goes on there automatically. So,
Yep.
but that's it in a
Right.
nutshell.
So we know where to find you.
Yeah.
What can we expect next from you?
I don't know.
Oh
But I
boy.
have a name. If I write, I have all these notes, and everybody that read my book said, write another book. When's the next book? I said, that was my career. What do you want? It's like, but seriously, write another book.
Yeah.
And then the other day, I said to my wife, we were talking about where we can't, because I alienate people left and right, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And so, because I just say what I think, I'm not politically correct. I don't give a shit, you know? It's like, well, I'm offended by that. It's like, yeah, so I'm hungry. You know, like
You and I will get along very well. I'm exactly the same
you're
way.
offended. I'm hungry. Now, what does that mean to you? Like, you know, okay, you're hungry, eat. You're offended, go stick your head in the lake. I don't,
Go fuck yourself.
yeah. So I don't say that. I say blow me. I never say go fuck yourself.
Okay.
Very rude, but blow me is much more succinct and much more direct and eloquent.
Yeah.
Who is you? But so the title, I said to her, you know, we can't go this one because you alienated her wife when you know, whatever the hell it is, insulted. And I said, you know what? I can't take me anywhere. And I went, God damn it, that's a great title for another book.
I
So now I
love it.
can write it because I got such a great fucking title. It's right on the nose. That's I can't take me anywhere. Usually the expression is, you know, I can't take him anywhere. But if I'm saying it, it's funny.
Yeah.
So you might see that. And it's a project with Fred Armisen.
Mm.
And I'm not, I mean, I created with a guy named Larry Ratso Sloman. I don't know if you know him.
Mm-hmm. I've heard the name.
So
Yes.
we came up with this thing and they're trying to sell it. And if they do, we created it. So we would write. Fred Armisen is from Valley Stream, where I'm from.
Okay.
And he went to school of visual arts after that, which I did. But he's younger than me.
Mm-hmm.
So I didn't know him then, but I know him from Zoom, you know, doing this with, you know, once he got attached to the project. But I have nothing to do with selling it. So you might see that.
Well, you know what? Whatever you come out with, I'm definitely looking forward to. I loved everything that you've done in the past, and I'm sure I'm going to love the stuff that comes out in the future. So keep up the great work, Jeff. Thank you very much for being on the
Have
show.
any viewers in England? But it's on, when is this? When are you going to post this thing?
I'm hoping, usually I have it every Sunday, so I'm going to get it to my editor, and I'm hoping for next Sunday. So today's the 22nd, so what? 29th, I'm hoping by.
What's it called?
It's called The Claws Corner. CLAWS. The Claws Corner. And it's on YouTube, Spotify, iTunes, Amazon Music, Audible, iHeartRadio, and also some smaller Connecticut radio stations, which the radio stations will have to edit out some of this, but
How come you didn't say Claw's Corner like 16 times?
oh, I have an intro and an outro, and then during the show, my editor puts it on the screen. It'll
I
say,
did a radio show in Elmsford, across the street from a cemetery, WABC morning drive guy. But it's literally, there's a cemetery and then there's this little house and they do the show in there. And I said, what's your audience? Like, who's listening to AM radio anymore? You know, this kind of thing. I said, aside from the people across the street, I have no choice. And he says, pretty much. And he kept asking me to come back. You know who that is?
no.
Leo or some. It was weird. Like, I never think of radio. It's all podcasts now.
Oh, I know, definitely. That's all I listen to. I was in radio for a little while, and I realized in the '90s I went to Connecticut School of Broadcasting, and I realized that there was no money in it at all. A major FM station I was working at, this is in the '90s, making $5 an hour, and they even said, they're like, well, if you don't want the job, there's plenty of people that will take it. So it was fun to do, and it was a great hobby. I have so much more fun doing this because there's no limitations. I can do whatever I want, say whatever I want, and no restrictions. And like you said, it's funny because in radio, I would have to say every so often, and you're listening to The Claws Corner. That's Jeff Lieberman on The Claws Corner. So with this, like I said, on the screen anyway, you're going to see it all over the place, but I don't have to announce to the public every 10 minutes We'll be right back with Jeff Lieberman on the Claw's Corner right after this.
That's what I was doing. Yeah,
No, I know, yeah.
old shtick. All right, man. This is fun.
Yeah, it was great.
Give me the cyber shake. You can use your claw.
I am.
Oh, you want to hear a funny, not a claw story,
I love.
but Bob Dylan. There's a story about him. This guy, Eddie. I shouldn't say his name, but he's a very funny comedy writer, very successful. And he said that shaking hands with Bob Dylan is the same as shaking hands with Stephen Hawking. And when Hawking was alive, and I shook hands with Bob Dylan once. I was on the floor when I heard that because it's like, you're exactly right. And here's another thing.
That's funny.
It's like a PS thing. Stephen Hawking did they did a documentary on his book called A Brief History of Time.
Mm-hmm.
We were living in Beverly Hills, so we got invited to the screening at the, one of those Academy screening rooms, big screening. And he's there. And he was in the later stages, all he could do is move his pinky and go down. He had the computer and he would go down the menus and construct the things you want to say. So he's literally constructing a sentence, right?
Yeah.
So he's going to make a speech. He did that right next to me. I was looking at the screen and what he was doing throughout the screening. Then when the screening's over, he goes zipping down, goes up the ramp, did almost a wheelie, spins around, everybody laughed, but he presses the thing and he talked, it's
Yep.
that artificial sound. So I saw how much work it took him to say anything, right?
Mhm.
You couldn't just ask him and he just can't answer. You'd have to scroll and all that. Comes to the reception afterwards. Everybody is drinking wine and ignoring him because they're Hollywood shitheads, they're like,
Yeah.
so he's over there. Normally, if it was George Clooney, and they'd be crowded there. So he's over there with his nurse in the corner, just sitting there. It was pathetic. I said to my wife, I said, hold my drink. She'd always say, what are you going to do? You never know what I'm going to do. I go over to him, stand in front of him. And he's like, he had no muscle. So he was just like a slump. His mouth is open. And I knew the thing with the thing. And I said, do you mind? She says, go ahead. What are you going to say to her? I went, knock, knock. And his eyes started fluttering. And she said, he's laughing his ass off because I know what he's going to have to go, who's there? You know what I mean? To like that. And that, again, that was like George Burke. That was one of my high notes, Richard Pryor.
Yeah.
I made that fucking guy laugh because she knew. She knew that he was laughing.
Yeah.
Right reason. He's
Yeah.
smart guy. It's great.
Well, I got to tell you something similar. It's nobody famous, but a friend of mine's brother has cerebral palsy really bad. He's in a wheelchair. He could barely. He's almost like Stephen Hawking in a way, like the same type where he can't move. He could, and so when I go up to him, just joking around, I said, "Hey, let me shake your hand." And I'm like pretending like, "Oh, come on, let go, let go, let go." I'm on the ground, writhing in pain, just kidding, and he's laughing and laughing. So about 3 weeks later, I was at a Barnes and Noble, and some guy came up to me. He goes, I just wanted to let you know, I'm Michael's aide, and I want to thank you. I said, what do you mean? He goes, you're one of the only people that would actually treat him normally and joke around with him and have fun. He appreciated that so much. He's so sick of people, toe tapping around him and so worried about what they're going to say. He goes, the fact that you made a joke, I want to thank you. I said, oh, you're welcome.
Listen, Freddie Roach is a world famous boxing trainer. He had Manny Pacquiao. And they actually did HBO. They did Being Freddie Roach. They did a 6-part thing on him with his gym. And Ray Donovan was based on that gym because his brother had Parkinson's and all.
Mm-hmm.
Pepper Roach, his brother, Freddie Roach's brother, Pepper, had a stroke during the HBO series. Had a stroke. His right arm was completely useless. And but before that stroke, I used to have thumb wrestle with him, but I'd go into LA. and Freddie Roach would roll his eyes and walk away. You know, I go, I'm gonna kick you. I come in really like, where is he? I'm gonna kick your ass. And the two of us would go and get our thumbs and we go, one, two, you know, side of thumb wrestle, whatever, and you know, and really trying to win, you know. So now he has a stroke. So now he's completely, he has a sling and he's totally useless thing, and he's talking slow, and I go there, and I said, "Come on, motherfucker." Irish, you know, tough guy, and he goes, "I can't use it." You know, he said, "I had the stroke. We got to do it with the other hand." I went, "Oh, he had a stroke. What else is he gonna think of, you pussy?" You know, and he's on the floor. And that's he finally Freddie was laughing, you know, because that's the thing.
Yep.
He feels better. I feel terrible that he has a stroke. What am I gonna do? Gee, you know, it's the last thing he wants to hear.
Yeah. Yep. And I actually, it's funny because you and I have a very similar sense of humor. I could tell because I did something. I was at my friend's parents' anniversary party, and there was only one person not dancing. I'm like, hey, how come you're not dancing? And everybody like, he had a stroke. Yeah. I was like, well, dance with your good side. And the guy just started laughing. Her parents were mortified at first. Oh my God, why is Rich making jokes about that? The guy was laughing. I said, people just want to be treated normal. They don't want people to feel sorry for them for the most part.
Yeah.
And I don't really have it bad at all. As you can see, it's just my hand and my leg. I have little bit of a limp. But I remember when I was little, people were like trying, oh, I'll do this for you. I was like, no, I could do it myself. Now I don't have that problem. But I mean, I used to hate that.
Were you naturally right-handed or left-handed?
I was born with this, so I don't know if I would have been right-handed. So I don't know
You can't tell that. I think there's something with your vision.
If I could tell you my right side, which is the bad side. The vision on my right side is worse than the left. So I don't know. It's not really, I don't know, it wasn't really affected. I think as I got older, I mean, that's when I noticed it when I got older, that like, say if I close this eye, it's blurry, but when I close this eye, so I don't know if it would have been I would have been left-handed because the right side does seem a little.
You know, Nicky Arnold, you're blessed compared to him. I mean, he was,
Yeah.
I don't think he ever walked.
Wow. Yeah, no.
For him to go that far in comedy, I mean, just look him up. I mean, the guy, he should be he was so funny, but so dark. I mean, just Arnold Horshack.
I loved it.
Knew him, and I'd watch that show. I go, how sick that he's writing the show. He's the head writer of the show, and he wants Arnold Horshack, whatever his name was, to laugh the way he laughs because he had. I mean,
yeah, no, that's great.
And that's how Nicky laughed. That's where he got, yes.
Yeah.
It's wild.
No, see, I love the fact when people have a sense of humor about themselves and they don't take themselves so seriously. Especially as we mentioned, most people don't want them to feel sorry for them, and they want to be treated just like everybody else. And I love that he got as far as he did. That's really impressive.
Fucking funny, and he's writing for other people.
Yeah,
writing for Carson. So
yeah.
You know.
Well, it's funny because the person I mentioned that was in the wheelchair, he ended up, I don't know exactly what he did, but he was working with Shania Twain. So he's the same way. He had the same kind of discipline, perseverance, and he always never let anything get in the way. And he wrote a book, but he was typing with his nose because he can't use his hand. And he'd go like this. And I said, how'd you type a book with your nose? But he did it. It's impressive.
Wow.
So if people want to do something, they can really do it. And these people make excuses like, oh, I didn't have a easy break in life, this and that. I'm like, if you really want it, you can do it. And so you and I just brought up so many examples of
wish I could
perseverance.
Say that I typed Squirm with my nose. That would be that would be really? Yeah.
Well, I'm just glad you typed it and you didn't throw it out because I love that movie, and there's so many other people that agree with me.
Typed it on a Selectric portable typewriter. All right, man.
All right.
Take care. Cyber Shake.
Cyber Shake.
All right, man.
All right. Have a great one, Jeff. I'll talk to you soon.
All right.
That wraps up the latest episode of The Claws Corner. A huge thanks goes out to writer, director, producer, and documentarian Jeff Lieberman for taking time out of his extremely busy schedule to be a guest on my show. Thank you very much, Jeff. I also need to thank editor extraordinaire John Bristol of the award-winning Elmwood Productions for always doing a superb job editing this show each and every week and making it available to all on YouTube. I am also extremely grateful to Rob Bull and Joseph Timothy Quirk for all they do to make my show available on several Connecticut radio stations as well as Spotify, iTunes, Amazon Music, Audible, and iHeartRadio. Thank you both very much. Another heartfelt thank you goes out to Al Coles for airing this on a local public access station in Connecticut to help me expand my audience. But lastly, definitely not least, I need to thank you, the viewer, for always tuning in. Enjoy your day, everyone.